Good morning, everybody. We are back for another episode on the Market Open. It is Wednesday, August 12th. We are live. We have CPI in about 8 minutes, and that is why I am early. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We also had some earnings this morning that I think people are really excited about. We had some earnings last night that were also super, super important, and that had to do with CoreWeave, SMCI. Today, we have Nbis. We also had Lumentum yesterday. TLDR, Nbis crushed it. CoreWeave crushed it. We will talk about those earnings and get deeper into essentially what those earnings mean for the broader AI infrastructure trade, and the fact that the AI infrastructure trade right now is actually picking up some momentum in the pre-market. It's exciting to see if we can just get a really decent CPI. Then I think the market is gonna have some fun, and the market's gonna like some of the stuff that we got. So let's see what CPI looks like. I bought 3 new stocks last night in the overnight markets. I will talk about it after we get the CPI. So hopefully those stocks are up, but if we get a bad CPI, they will be down. And we're gonna see how the market ultimately reacts to what's going on with CPI. We got some updates on Iran. That update is not that positive, to be honest. So I'm a little nervous that if the CPI is bad and you have oil that's up another 1% right here in the pre-market, we're almost at $84, then obviously it's not going to be good for equities. But the actual earnings that we got from the positions that, a lot of people have been counting on to deliver the numbers that would necessitate to prove that we're not really in this AI bubble, aka CoreWeave, Nbis, SMCI, etc. They put up some really good numbers. They put up some really freaking good numbers. Nbis right here in the pre-market is up 15%. Now, it was up 10% before the print, and that was due to the insane CoreWeave numbers, which we will talk about. CoreWeave's up 18% right there, 107 in the pre-market. The stock was at $58 during the Leopold lows. Nbis was at 148. Now the stock's back up to 223. Michael Burry shorted Nbis at 212 in size. As per what he said last week, it's now at 223. If this thing can hold on to momentum and if CPI can come in way better than expected, maybe Nbis has the run up to 230. Maybe CoreWeave has a run back up to 120. I mean, these names are still down 20 to 35% from their actual highs. A lot of the AI infrastructure names, quite frankly, are still down a decent chunk from their highs. But these both companies put up the numbers they needed, and hopefully those numbers actually get the market to be excited. So we will talk about all of those and get into it. In the next 5 minutes, we got CPI. We'll talk about Nbis and CoreWeave, obviously, but let's get through CPI and see what the market thinks. The most important thing about this CPI number, based on the expectations that I've seen, is really the trajectory of where they think energy is going. If you look at some of the predictions on CPI, most analysts have it coming in at 3.4. I'm going to look at the exact consensus estimate right here. We have PPI tomorrow as well. 3.4. So 3.5 was the previous number. 3.4 is the consensus. If we get 3.3, I think we're rallying. I don't think it's going to be a sell the news. I mean, maybe it could be a sell the news because obviously the futures are green. So one could argue that it's baked in a little bit. But if it's not a sell the news and you actually do get a lot of things lining up, that Jensen $500 billion announcement was really important just to highlight why AI infrastructure continues to be undervalued and how compute constrained we are. Everything that CoreWeave said on the call, everything that Nbis said on the call this morning also continues to highlight how compute constrained we are. If we could get a healthy CPI with oil coming down, even though that unfortunately has been going up over the past couple of days, and the earnings story staying intact. I mean, August tends to be weak, but we're 12 days into August. S&P's at all-time highs. The semis have continued to be weak. Really, the semis have done nothing this entire month. So the fact that there is a chance for the semis to actually get some love and momentum, I think would be very exciting. But we're going to need a good CPI, and hopefully in the next 4 minutes, we're going to get that, and the market can react in a much more positive way. Nbis right there, up 15% right there in the pre-markets. CoreWeave, that is up 18% in the pre-market. Burry's work just couldn't let him not lose money. Danny is referencing the quote that Burry said when he shorted Nbis. He was like, I tried to go back to work, but I just couldn't go back to work without shorting Nbis. I mean, he was obviously being pretty arrogant and cocky that day. And I mean, Nbis fell 20% from where he shorted it at. But if he didn't cover, which, from my understanding, he uploads his trades every single day to his Substack. He has like a like there's like a daily thing where he uploads his trades. That's how everyone is able to see all the updates on what he's doing every day. So if he closed it, and he mentioned when he closed half of his Palantir short at 107. He didn't close the whole thing, but he mentioned he closed half of it at 107. Obviously, the other half has been underwater because Palantir is at 170. So if he closed it at 189 or 195 or whatever, I think he would have mentioned it. I don't know what the transparency standards are on his Substack, but the people that are paying obviously expect him to give updates every time he makes a trade. And so if he didn't close it yet and Nbis continues to squeeze, remember Nbis is 30% short. There's a world in which that stock continues to squeeze his short position as well. SMCI, that's up 9% in the pre-market. We'll talk about what happened with SMCI yesterday. Really, really good numbers. Lumentum also crushed it. I mean, all the AI infrastructure names that have been effectively dead since the Leopold liquidation event. Now, they've rebounded, but they haven't rebounded anywhere near their all-time highs. All of them are up right now in the pre-market, even some of the memory names, because I think there's a little bit of renewed excitement and exuberance for the AI infrastructure trade on top of the $500 billion announcement that Jensen made. What's down in the pre-market? You guessed it, software. I think this might actually be a day where if the semiconductor gains can hold on to their momentum, maybe we get back to a little bit of the long semi-short software trade. Doesn't mean the software names are going to collapse. I don't think Zeta is going back to 20. I don't think Palantir is going back to 120. But, you might have some weakness on the software names because they've obviously been rallying for the past couple of weeks and the semis have been flat. And so you might have a little bit of a trade-off right there. Robinhood's up 1% pre-market. Meta's up a little bit in the pre-market. Amcor's up 2.5%. Then Tesla is up 0.33% as well. The consensus on CPI is 3.4. Put in the chat what you think it's going to be. We will talk about all the earnings and updates over the past 24 hours in terms of macro updates, Iran stuff, Nbis, CoreWeave, etc. Let's just get through CPI. Let's see what we get. You did not miss it. If you are just joining, we are early today because of CPI. We should be getting it in 30 seconds. And then we will know how the market reacts to it. Let's go to SPY right here. SPY, are we up pre-market? We are up 773. We're actually down yesterday, 0.3%. Volume has been a bit flat. Some people are saying 4%. Dude, I don't know if we're going to get 4%. I don't know if we're going to get 3% either. I think it's going to be consensus. I'm not taking the over or the under. I think it's going to be 3.4. And hopefully it's under that. But I think it would be 3.4. All right, we are waiting for it. Let me just, you guys can look at SPY. I'll look at the actual numbers. 3.4. 3.4. Okay, we come in line with expectations. 3.4. Month over month, 0.1. That was expected. Year over year core, 2.5. That was expected. Month over month core, 0.2. That was expected. Literally came in line with expectations across the entire board. Does the market like it? The market is flattish. Doesn't love it, doesn't hate it, but we came in with expectations.
September meeting. And on the foreign exchange side, the dollar's at a 3.5-year low versus the Chinese yuan. And here we go, 7:30, 8:30 Eastern. July CPI hitting the wires, up 0.1% on the headline month-over-month number, exactly as expected. In the rearview mirror, as of this point, still unrevised, down 0.4%, was a massive drop for June. If we take out food and energy, up 0.2, exactly as expected. And if we take a year-over-year perspective, a headline year-over-year up 3.4, exactly as expected. That follows 3.5. 3.4 would be the lightest since March when we were 3.3. And in my opinion, maybe the most important number is the CPI year-over-year core. Expected 2.5, and it arrives at 2.5. That follows 2.6. So we had January, February, June, July, all at 2.5. We haven't been below 2.5 since March of 21 when we were at 1.6. Now, I always like to take a very close look at what's going on in the actual indices. On the CPI main indice created in 1913, it comes in at 333.91, which is actually not a new all-time high, which is a good thing. In the rearview mirror, the May read was 335. That's the all-time high. So we're actually moving down a bit on the index. That's good news. Now, if we look at the index on a core basis, comes in at 336.78, and that is a new all-time high on that indice.
Okay, so if you're just joining, 3.4 was the expectation. 3.4 is what we got for inflation right here. Shelter rose 0.1% in July, accounting for, wow, 2/3 of the monthly items increase. The index for food increased 0.1%. Energy declined, which actually makes sense because oil was down. So it wasn't an oil thing in July, wasn't natural gas. It was shelter out of all things. That can be resolved. Shelter's actually, I feel like oil's a bit harder to get down given the nature of the geopolitical conditions of the war. Shelter, and there are some things that can help shelter go down. And if oil comes down again in August, I mean, we could potentially see CPI in September come down pretty nicely if it actually plays out the right way. The index for all items less food and energy rose 0.2%. Indices that increased over the month were medical care, airline fares, communication, education, and recreation. Conversely, the index for motor vehicle insurance was among the major indices that decreased in July. Okay, 3.4. We got CPI out of the way. That was, I think, the big thing the markets were a bit jittery about over the past couple of days. Nbis 226. We're going to get into those earnings in just a second. That's up 17%. SMCI is up 9%. CoreWeave is up 21%, $109. You are seeing a massive re-rating of those two stocks, and I think that's affecting the entirety of the AI trade. Micron, that is up back above 900, up about 4%. Bloom Energy, that is up 6%. Intel, that is up 1.65%. Applied Digital is up 9%. Cypher is up 7%. IREN is up 9%, 43.37. I mean, you are seeing potentially, wow, Robinhood 96, the AI trade coming back, which means software and hyperscalers are probably going to be down today. If software and hyperscalers actually go up today in the face of in the face of all these semi names running, then I mean we are in a massive bull market. Also, Bitcoin comes out to play. Bitcoin kind of up a little bit, 64,222. But you know, the AI infra names have not had some fun for the past couple of weeks, and so I think it's time for them to get some momentum. Nbis right there, almost 227. CoreWeave, that's at 109. You got Dell, that's up 2.9% because of SMCI earnings, which they crushed, and the S&P 500 reaching an intraday pre-market high at 773 as that continues to go green. Okay, so let's talk about these earnings. Let's talk about these earnings. Again, if you're just joining, CPI came in at 3.5%, or sorry, 3.4%. I'm going to pin that right there so everyone can see it if they come in. And let's talk about some of the earnings we got yesterday. Burry didn't sleep well tonight. Well, I would imagine Burry is going to double down on these shorts and he's going to say, oh, these numbers are fake, they're not real, yada, yada. But I mean, regardless, dude, we know what happens when the neoclouds run. When they, especially Nbis, when it runs, it runs. Now, when it dumps, it dumps. And last time it dumped, you had an entire massive deleveraging liquidation event happen in the entire AI trade, which I think was part of the reason it dumped. But when it runs, it runs. And I mean, if he's going to double down on the short, he's going to have to average up on that position because if you don't have that reverse, then I would imagine you're going to see some pain on a lot of those short positions. All right, so let's get into it. Let's start with Nbis. They crushed it. They crushed it. Revenue, $582 million, up 454% year over year. EPS was up 68% year over year. ARR at the end of June, they're guiding for $3 billion. That's up 58% Q over Q. Their contracted power guidance has been raised to 5 gigawatts at the end of 2026. I thought that was one of the more bullish parts of the quarter. There's a couple other quotes we'll talk about that were also really exciting as well. Contracted power guidance has increased 5x since August 2025. Capacity footprint expanding across US and Europe, and their entire fiscal year 2026 guidance was reaffirmed. There were some people saying they should be increasing the fiscal year guidance, and I think that's like a fair thing to nitpick at if there's that much demand. But I think it's less about them not having the demand to be able to increase their guidance. I think it's more about the supply. Why do I think it's more about the supply? Well, this was one of the quotes they said on the press release, which I thought was pretty interesting. Quote, we could sell our entire 2027 capacity on these terms today. We are deliberately not doing so because we see higher value in retaining some capacity to immediate customer needs. So I think it's more of a supply problem, which is why Jensen is injecting $500 billion into the infrastructure ecosystem to be able to finance all these companies to get those GPUs online, data, land, power, energy, all the stuff you need to bring this stuff into fruition. versus a demand problem. Obviously, it does not seem like demand has been the issue when it comes to a company like Nbis or CoreWeave, which we'll talk about in a second as well. This one from their slide deck, I also thought was really important. The payback period for deals closed in Q2 are now 1 year and 10 months. Quote, we see a price opportunity in the 40 to 50 million per megawatt range, and we signed our first one this week. Manuela right there making a pretty obvious argument right there about how significant that could be for ROIC, return on invested capital. As Nate says right there in the chat, payback period is under 2 years. I mean, that's part of the bear case for a lot of the neoclouds, right? Is that they're not going to actually get the return on invested capital and the payback happening in a meaningful time frame, which is leading to the EBITDA not being as strong, which is leading to the GAAP profitability not being there. And, you know, these companies are still a bit far away from GAAP profitability. But if you believe in sort of a traditional growth stock investing mindset, which is you invest for the future and the profitability will come as you continue to grow, get capacity, gain market share, then it seems like these companies are well on their way to get that. And that continues to be very, very exciting when we look at what Nbis is doing right here. So all in all, I mean, the numbers that they needed to show to prove that they are doing what they need to do, it's showing. It's showing in the numbers. Again, their guidance for year-end 2026, 5 gigawatts of capacity. One of the biggest things that people have lamented about Nbis is that they don't have that much contracted gigawatt capacity compared to other neoclouds. But as they start to kind of close the gap and get more deals, they did announce a big hyperscaler deal. Usually that happens in Q3. That didn't happen in Q2. But obviously the revenue growth up 455% year over year, and the ARR guidance growth continues to prove that there is plenty of demand, and obviously those deals are coming in a meaningful way. Now, remember, the entire thesis around the neoclouds is that there is so much demand for compute. So many people want to inject themselves into the world of AI, enterprise, governments, sovereigns, et cetera. And the hyperscalers can't handle all of that, which is why the hyperscalers are working with the neoclouds. Now, some people might say that business model in and of itself is not the most attractive, which is very fair. There's a decent set of arguments to believe in for that case. What I think some of the neoclouds are trying to do, at least the best ones, are not trying to just sell the bare metals of the GPUs, but build software infrastructure, business applications on top of all that, have equity stakes in different companies, ClickHouse, Toloka, et cetera, that Nbis has. And that helps scale the company, that helps make them, theoretically, as Nbis has said, a hyperscaler cloud versus just a neocloud in and of itself. And you're obviously going to need Jensen's help to do that, which is why that $500 billion of financing was announced over the past couple of days. Then you had CoreWeave, which crushed it as well. Revenue up 112% year over year. Adjusted EBITDA up 101% year over year. Their adjusted EBITDA margins went from 55 to 59, which is very exciting to see. The fact that you're showing some operating leverage, I think, is the biggest thing for companies that are unprofitable. If they can get that adjusted EBITDA margin up to like 70% by the end of next year, you're going to have a lot more money coming down to the bottom line. Revenue backlog of 104 billion. They also signed 25 billion of new customer commitments in early Q3. So technically, the revenue backlog is 130 billion. Which initially the stock dropped. It's up 18% right now, but it dropped because that backlog number was definitely a lot less than expected. It was 99 last Q, only up another 5 billion. Was not that exciting, but they just didn't include what was committed in Q3. You put that together, it looks like their RPO is actually way better than expected. And their active power is 1.5 gigawatts with contracted power of 3.7 gigawatts. Nbis is saying we're going to have contracted power of 5 gigawatts by the end of the year. I would imagine CoreWeave would be trying to get to that level as well. I mean, if these companies get anywhere near 10 to 15 gigawatts over the next 4 or 5 years, Jensen is saying it's going to be about 80 to $1 billion of revenue per gigawatt. You could obviously imagine why people are excited for the level of growth that's there. And then if they can really inch out a margin by actually offering other services on top of just the GPU licensing, you know, that's where these companies can become cash machines. CoreWeave reached an important inflection point this quarter as their scale began to translate into expanding operating leverage. Again, there's a reason the CEO immediately started the press release with that sentence. They need to show the street that it's not just about revenue growth, but we can bring that growth to the bottom line. Customer demand is accelerating as enterprise adoption broadens, and we continue to deepen our technology platform. Now, here's the most interesting thing about CoreWeave, and this is something I genuinely could not believe, but it is real. And the fact that it actually happened yesterday was kind of unbelievable, and it once again proves to me maybe Jensen is not crazy. Maybe Jensen is not crazy. CoreWeave said yesterday on the call, we signed an A100 contract, not an H100, an A100 contract, a SKU of GPUs introduced in 2020 from NVIDIA for 3 years into 2029. So 6-year-old NVIDIA products are being rented through 2029, giving them 3 more years of value before they get officially depreciated, and effectively 9 years of useful lifespan. I don't think it's hyperbolic to say that if there is that much demand, where there is somehow customers that are out there that are saying, okay, I can't get Rubin, I can't get Blackwell, I can't get Hopper, give me the freaking A100 because I need something, then where do we think this is going? Because we still only have, from my understanding, maybe 1.5 billion people globally using AI. And those are just like monthly active users. We definitely don't have 1 billion people daily that are actively engaging with these AI products. Gets into the broader bull case of the amount of services, products, physical AI that's yet to come online. I mean, when we get to that point, it's obviously going to take a lot of compute. You start to see those numbers and you start to recognize, wait a second, these 6 bankers that Jensen convinced to loan out $500 billion to the companies of his choice to help bring compute online. I think those bankers are also looking at some of the deals that these NVIDIA GPUs are getting 6 years after they were created, going 3 years into the future and saying, okay, compute actually needs to become an asset class because there's this much demand for that compute, and there's this much life cycle to the compute, which, by the way, completely decimates Burry's depreciation argument. I mean, every single argument over the past couple of months has started to fall apart. The depreciation was like his first kind of stab at this entire AI ecosystem argument. That argument obviously seems to not be going that well, but I think that's why the financiers are very excited about it as well. And given their level of excitement, you could imagine that there's going to be some more money going into the AI ecosystem, which just means there's going to be more earnings growth for all the companies that continue to provide that compute, whether they're the memory names, whether they're the neoclouds, whether they're the picks and shovels, whether they're the optics, photonics names, CPUs, GPUs. It once again goes back to that entire AI revolution. I don't think anything has necessarily changed from June. It's just in June, the leverage got so crazy that the names got so parabolic that obviously it wasn't able to sustain itself. You kind of needed a bit of a reset. A lot of those names are still down 30 to 40% from the highs. And now you have more evidence, which you're going to continuously need more evidence, right? Because there's always going to be those fears that this thing is not real. And the earnings are the best evidence to prove that you're seeing more of that momentum. AMD right there, that's up 2% as well in the pre-market, 483. AMD still below 500 as you're getting more and more momentum. So yeah, it's like emergency tier to be renting a 6-year-old GPU. I mean, the fact that there's a company out there that wanted CoreWeave's 6-year-old GPUs just to me says, like, if they could have got Blackwell, if they could have got Vera Rubin, if they potentially could have got their hands on an MI450, they would. And so that's what gives NVIDIA, AMD, Broadcom the pricing power, which gives them the gross margins, which gives Micron the pricing power and gross margins. But it also gives a lot of people the idea that they can enter into these positions with massive amounts of leverage, which could lead to a blow up because financial markets don't just go up and to the right forever. So that reset that we've had, honestly, I think has been incredibly healthy. Like it was not healthy seeing those names up 5% every single day for a month. And now I think these names can get back to those all-time highs, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, but over time as they either A, consolidate, or B, continue to execute to the point where they deserve to get that money going into those asset classes without having to worry about them necessarily being overvalued, even if their multiple is expanding. And I think that's the good thing about what has happened right here, and that's the good thing about some of the earnings that we're seeing. Iran up 8.93%, that is green. Lumentum's up 7.5%, SMCI is up 9% as well. AEHR got a follow-on order today for about 25 million. This stock has gotten like 3 different purchase orders. I think one of them from a hyperscaler over the past month, along with like a blockbuster earnings that they had. This stock, I think, got to like $40. Now it's at 123 in the July meltdown. So, the volatile names will definitely go down a bunch, but as they continue to execute and the market sentiment shifts, you start to get some more excitement. Corning should be up right now. I believe that should be green. Corning, yeah, there you go, 167. Up 5%. That fell to like 120 in July. Just so many of these names got hit, and they're starting to get a lot more of that excitement. CPI, for those that are joining, 3.4%. 3.4% is what we got for CPI. Amcor's up almost 5%. Came in line with expectations, so the market is not freaking out about that. If we came in at 3.3, I think the market would be really excited, but the fact that we at least came in at 3.4, which is down month over month. It was at 3.5 in June. Gas prices were still up 26% year over year to 24% year over year, but that's down from 26% in June. Oil prices were up 39.1%, but that was 42% in June. So a lot of things ended up coming down. Shelter went up, which was the reason for the inflation. But outside of that, headline CPI was at 3.4. Okay, so That is what we had yesterday from CoreWeave and Nbis. We got a couple other earnings that we'll talk about: Lumentum, SMCI, and T1 Energy. But overall, you are still seeing a decent chunk of green that we're getting right here in the pre-market across all the other AI names. Couple quick macro headlines, and then let's talk about a few other things that we've got going on that have happened over the past 24 hours. So first of all, just real quick on Iran. I mean, I think this is why oil is up right now, but the market doesn't care too much. Senior Iranian source this morning says there has been absolutely no progress on the issue of negotiations. Now, Trump would disagree. He says that the Iranians are ready to make a deal in the pre-market, or not in the pre-market. I wish in the pre-market, in the private conversations they're having, but they're not ready to make a deal publicly. So, you know, the Iranians are saying that we're not going to have any deal. Trump is saying, of course, we're going to have a deal. They just don't want to admit that we're going to have a deal. So, you know, eventually, hopefully we do end up getting a deal. But as of what the Iranians are saying, you know, as it doesn't look like they are ready to make a deal from their public statements. Crude is up about 0.5% right here in the pre-market. If we can get this thing back under 75, I mean, S&P to 78, 7,900 does not look that crazy. But we have to see if that ends up getting there. Unfortunately, we are not there yet. Not Michael Burry. Skrelly shorted CoreWeave. Really? Huh. Well, he's never been a fan of the Neo Clouds, I think. Interesting. Skrelly shorted CoreWeave. I will try to get his logic on that. I think there will be a lot of people that enter into these shorts. Don't get me wrong. I mean, you know, you get 20, 25% days. A lot of people will interpret that as irrational exuberance. Which, look, I don't know if Nbis and CoreWeave can hold the level of momentum they're having in the pre-market. They're just still down a lot from their highs. I mean, CoreWeave got to the high of 187 at one point. Nbis was basically at 300 at one point. So, you know, maybe they don't have to hold these pumps, but to short them, to expect them to go down, you know, back to the levels they were at in July, I think is, I mean, now that you have these types of numbers and these earnings and sentiment might be changing and inflation's not that bad, like you put all those macro forces together, whatever took everything down in July, which was a combination of a lot of things, can take everything back up. I mean, things can change very quickly. And it feels like that could be happening right now. Nbis up 17%, again, on a massive crush. And then CoreWeave of 19%. Let's do Lumentum and SMCI really quickly. Lumentum crushed on the top and the bottom. Optics demand continues to grow. Operating leverage continues to be high. It's up 7.5%. Would not surprise me if this thing crosses 900. It was very close to doing so last night. 882 right here in the pre-market, up 7.5%. AEHR, Coherent, AAOI, those are all up in the pre-market. A, because all the semis are running, but B, because optics demand continues to be incredibly strong. Lumentum is basically growing double year over year. Now, stock's up a lot year to date, so obviously one could argue it might be priced for perfection, but again, it is down a lot, so it's more priced on momentum versus perfection. Momentum has yet to really come back into the stock ever since it took a big hit back in July, and back it continues to give it some more excitement. SMCI right there, this is up 9%. So SMCI's earnings were really good. Two things, they increased their margins by double. They already disclosed that a while ago. Now, the CEO did say that the margin increase was due to a combination of different products that they offered into their ecosystem. I don't know if that means that 17% gross margins are unsustainable in the future. They did reaffirm the guide for 17% margins for fiscal year 2026. Last year was 8.3%. So obviously doubling your margins on a business that historically doesn't have good margins when it comes to server racks is super bullish. That's why Dell, HPE, all those stocks are getting some love. But the more important thing is they increased their revenue guidance by $18 billion. They increased their revenue guidance by $18 billion. And because of increasing the revenue guidance by $18 billion, I think, I think the market was pretty excited about that. If the market actually trusted SMCI management, the stock would be a $50 to $75 stock. The stock would not be stuck under $40. It did hit 50 back in June. And then I think the China GPU thing came out. It's like every time there's some controversy around accounting or smuggling GPUs and the market gets upset. Microsoft falling below 500 right here in the pre-market. All the hyperscalers and software names are down given the semi names are running. But I feel like if they're discounting their free cash flow based on the level of trust they have in management, that's why the stock is discounted versus the actual earnings growth that they continue to be. 34.53 right there, SMCI in the pre-market. All right, so here's what I have on Skrelly on his short. Why not have a prudent free cash flow to CFFO ratio now? When will the conditions be the case when you deliver or delever? CoreWeave can never delever because then the business is boring and slow growth. He didn't literally say he's short in these tweets that I'm looking at, but he is annoyed of the CapEx that's leading to revenue growth that is much lower than the CapEx, which is a fair point. They're spending $12 billion of CapEx and getting $2.5 billion of revenue. Nonetheless, I think, there's other parts to the kind of core thesis, particularly around backlog and translating that backlog into EBITDA profitability that he's ignoring. But that's also, if you're a bear on the neoclouds, you would be ignoring that, or you would say that that's not the right way that the business should be run. So, I mean, if that's the bear case, which historically has always been the bear case on the neoclouds, and I think that's not the craziest bear case. Nonetheless, if it's a momentum-driven rally right here on a lot of these neoclouds, even with strong earnings, then shorts might not be the easiest thing to tap into, especially if you start to get a lot more momentum. He said CoreWeave is a short. Well, saying CoreWeave is a short isn't necessarily shorting CoreWeave. So that there's a difference thing there. People say things are a short all the time. That doesn't mean they've actively gone short. And trust me, if Skrelly had gone short, he would say it because he loves the attention of shorting stuff. So I'll try to confirm if he is short. But if he is, he is. There's plenty of, there's 30% of people that are short Nbis, 20% of people that are short CoreWeave. So look, they've been right for the past month. It's just there was a lot of delevering during that time. As you get these numbers and the market digests these numbers and we have low inflation, I think the numbers start to become less indicative of why these names should deserve to be sold short. Cypher, that's up 8%. Applied Digital, that's up 8%. Iren, that's up 9%. Robinhood getting some love as the semis are running. That's up 1.5%. The software names, I can bet you, are all down together. Let's see right here in the pre-market. Software, yeah, look at that. The only one that's up is Oracle, and we know that on the days that semis are running, Oracle is not a software name. Intuit, Zscaler, CrowdStrike, ServiceNow, Adobe, Palantir, Datadog, Snowflake, Zeta, Salesforce, Twilio, all down in the pre-market as the semis continue to go higher. All right, cool. So that is what we have in terms of the earnings from yesterday and this morning. And CPI, if you're just joining, 3.4 came in way better than expected compared to last month. It came in line with expectations for the consensus. I hope it's not a sell the news when the market opens. I mean, we've seen that happen many times on CPI, but if you're getting a relatively decent reaction to the pre-market, I mean, we'll see. If it's a sell the news when the market opens, then it's a sell the news. But if it's not, then hopefully we can keep some of this excitement. Okay, so I bought 3 stocks last night in the overnight markets, and I'm going to show the 3 positions I bought, and then I'm going to talk about the 5 reasons why I bought these 3 positions. These are swing trades. These are not investments. They might turn into investments based on how it plays out. The goal is to hopefully hold them until the end of September, early October. That is the time frame in my mind. Obviously, that time frame can be affected by a variety of different macro conditions. But based on a few different things I put together last night, came to the conclusion that it's worth taking a bit of a bet on these 3 names. I think a lot of you guys will be happy with some of these 3 names. And it was time. It was officially time to take the bets. So the 3 names, I'm going to show the 3 screenshots right here. I'm going to leave the best one for last. Okay, number 1, Mr. Intel, 99.60. Mr. Intel at 99.60. Number 2, Mr. Bloom Energy at 217.78. Mr. Bloom Energy at 217.78. And then number 3. Are you guys ready for number 3? Are you guys ready for number 3? Pakistani sources. Pakistan continues its mediation efforts to return both sides to the MOU. Iran seeks amendments that Washington is not willing to provide an adequate response for. Okay, so Pakistan is still trying to figure out how to broker this deal. Number 3 is finally, for the first time in 2026, we're long memory, baby. DRAM. We are in DRAM at $53.28. We are officially long the memory trade. Okay, so DRAM, Intel, Bloom Energy might be surprising to a lot of people, might not be that surprising to some people. Why did we take the positions? Why are they swing trades? And theoretically, why could those swing trades become some decent investments? I think there's 5 reasons. I think there's 5 simple reasons. Number one, the 3 names I mentioned, all of them are down 30 to 40% from their highs. Bloom was at 330. It's at 217 when I bought it. Intel was at 147. It's at 99.6 when I bought it. DRAM was at $80.50. It's at 53.28. All these names are still down 30 to 50%. So I do not feel like I am buying into momentum and strength like it was in July, because these names are giving you 30 to 40% discounts. Because they still fall 30 to 40% from here. Sure, they did in July. But I think there's some structural conditions that have changed, which allows a more attractive entry. Did I get the bottom? No. My goal is not to get the bottom, no matter how many times you guys tell me that I like bottoms. But my goal is to get something that has a chart that's recovering. And this is honestly a lesson that I learned from Jason. By the way, Jason was on Basis Points last night if people want to watch that episode. Your goal is not to get the bottom. Your goal is not to catch the falling knife. Your goal is not to be perfect and say, I got it exactly when it bottom ticked. Your goal is to get a chart that's recovering, that's having more momentum built into it, but that still provides an attractive entry. And all 3 of these names are down 30 to 40%. Number 2, Kospi went up 5% yesterday. If you look at the chart on Kospi, I think Kospi is starting to have a meaningful recovery. I don't know if Kospi is going to get back to 9,000 anytime soon, but it just pulled back to the 40-week moving average, and you're starting to see some of that momentum come back in. There were a couple announcements with Samsung and SK Hynix, which we'll talk about later in the show. But from the looks of it, Kospi doesn't look like it's the worst gamble right here. Also, you got to ask yourself, SK Hynix trades at what, 4 times forward earnings? Samsung's at like 7 times. Like, how much lower do these stocks have to go? At some point, you can complain about memory being cyclical and this and that. And like, I don't like that Kospi is held up by 2 companies, but when you have the level of investment you're having in AI infrastructure, and you have the level of deleveraging and decline you've already had so far in a variety of these names and a variety of these indices, then I think it's a bit more attractive than not. Obviously, Kospi kind of explains my memory trade. I'll talk a little bit more about Micron, SanDisk, et cetera. But Samsung and SK Hynix are a big part of DRAM, so needing to make sure that Kospi is recovering is part of the way that I can effectively go long DRAM and not be afraid that like South Korea is going to mess up the trade. Number 3. And this was also a big reason yesterday. Citadel. We believe systematic buyers are getting ready to load up on stocks after a massive unwind. Citadel comes out with a sell-side report yesterday and says, hey, buy stocks. And not just buy stocks, buy the stocks that got sold off aggressively. Does anyone know why Citadel would be incentivized to tell people, the most important market maker on the planet, 1 of every 3 trades goes through a Citadel trading desk? Why would they be incentivized to get people to want to buy the AI names again? Well, maybe because 3 weeks ago, they scared everybody into a rate hike that wouldn't happen. They crashed the AI trade. They liquidated a 24-year-old kid and picked up $35 billion of his best names at dirt cheap levels. And now they're pumping the AI trade again to benefit. That is why I've said these 3 positions are a trade. They're not investments. Maybe the AI bull mania gets so crazy where they end up becoming investments. And because, if I bought Intel at 99 and it ends up going back to 150, I have a pretty safe margin of safety where I don't need to be pressured to sell it at 150, because now I can take a 10%, 20% drawdown and still be up on the position. But if I feel that the charts are turning on me, that the midterms are coming up, that, the war is not ending and I'm up at least 10, 20% of the position, I'd be willing to sell, because I think Citadel would technically be willing to sell as well. And as a result of that, I think they're trying to pump the entirety of the ecosystem in order to get the ability to get out of the trade. But there's also an argument that Citadel's not trying to sell these stocks. Citadel's trying to have positions on these stocks that are now massive. I mean, you got to think Ken Griffin is a smart guy. I don't think Ken Griffin thinks the AI trade is fake. I think Ken Griffin thinks that the AI trade was ridiculously overvalued back in July. So if Ken Griffin, who just got 5% of the entire company, Nbis, at $140, I think $150 was his cost basis, but even call it $160, $170. And he thinks over the next 3-4 years, Nbis is going to be a $300-$400 stock, just given the level of demand that's happening across the entire ecosystem. I mean, they'll probably sell some of their position for sure. They'll take some of their profits, but I mean, those positions could be locked in at dirt cheap levels, assuming that liquidation in July was the bottom, which is hard to say. But like the point is, they might be trying to pump their bags to actually allow their positions to flourish versus just completely sell. Will they sell some of it? Probably. But I think there, is a broader argument for that pump. And if they do sell some of it and you get a massive pump, then it's a trade and you can take some profits, which is not that crazy. Number 4, I think these names are attractive enough where I can double the position sizes on a 10 to 15% drawdown. So if you guys saw the actual numbers here, it's 100 shares of Intel, it's 50 shares of Bloom, and then 500 shares of DRAM. I am prepared to double those positions on a 10 to 15% drawdown without being like nervous. So if Intel gets down to like 85, buy another 100 shares, not that scary. Bloom gets back down to like 190, buy another 50 shares, not that scary. DRAM gets down to like 44, which I think it bottomed at. It would have to go to like 47 for a 10% drawdown from here. I would buy another 500 shares and not be that worried. So these were not full positions, I would say, that I've loaded up on right here, because obviously I do think if there's some weakness in the broader AI trade, then these names could take a 10, 15% drawdown, and then boom, you can DCA into the position. Now, if those names go down 30, 40%, I'm going to be bag holding them. It is what it is. But if I'm bag holding them and we get back to July levels, I would ask myself, what the hell happened for us to get back to July levels? Like, what went so wrong in the market for, you know, Bloom Energy to go back to 160, or for DRAM to go back to 44, or for like Micron to go back to low 700s? And I just don't see that happening. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think the worst of it from that perspective has happened. Now, September, October is a different question, which is, again, why it's a trade. I think September, October can be really ugly for a variety of different reasons, but in the next 1 or 2 months, if it's not as ugly, then it provides an opportunity to get some of that momentum. And then the final reason, and this is kind of the most obvious reason, this was the entire story that we talked about yesterday. This AI build out from Jensen is not slowing down. I mean, $500 billion of commitment. I know there's a lot of people that have concerns with how this is happening. At the end of the day, if these bankers are ready to put this much money into the ecosystem, it's going to be going to the companies that we talk about every day. Nbis, CoreWeave, Bloom, Micron, SanDisk. Like, these are the names that have been, obviously, NVIDIA and AMD. And I already have a massive NVIDIA position. So like, I thought about, hey, what if I just take that money and buy NVIDIA, which is fair because NVIDIA is, I think, going to go up towards the end of the year, given the earnings that we're about to get. I don't think Jensen does a $500 billion AI financing deal without having like massive, massive numbers. But I've already had an NVIDIA position. Part of the reason I missed the entire semiconductor run in 2026 is because I kept adding to NVIDIA because I felt it was the safer thing to do, which technically I was right about that. And that helped me from chasing like crazy in July. But now that a lot of these semi names have corrected meaningfully, again, these names are still down. And the reason I had my CoreWeave and Nbis is because I already have them. So that's why there was no reason to buy those. But these are still down so much. So it's like, yeah, you didn't get Bloom at 160, but you're also not buying Bloom at 350. And so, you know, the ability to kind of capture some of that alpha, knowing that you're paying a premium for these names, you're not getting dirt bottom prices, but you're definitely not getting exuberant overvalued prices. And when those, you know, next time Bloom hopefully gets to 350, we'll have enough earnings growth to justify why it's getting to 350 versus what happened in July. That's where I think the trade makes a lot more sense. And so that was the reason. That was the reason for the 3 buys: Intel, Bloom, and DRAM. Final thing on DRAM. Look, Micron, I know a lot of you guys don't like the skepticism that I've shown on memory. I continue to have that skepticism on memory because ultimately, at the end of the day, I do think that there is a boom and bust cycle here. I don't know when that bust is going to be. I think everyone has acknowledged there's a boom and bust cycle because most people don't want to hold this thing for the next 5 years. But you cannot deny that we are going to need more memory, that supply is not coming online anytime soon, that if prices peak, they probably peak in a year and a half. Maybe the market prices that in before, but if you get new innovations that lead to more memory demand, even with prices peaking, you're still going to have massive amounts of volume. And Micron should be getting somewhat more of a premium than what it's trading at here today. I don't know if that's 1,200, 1,500. I do think that's not, you know, 850, like it's basically been trading at in a range basically from 850 to 900 over the past couple of weeks. And from that perspective, it's kind of obvious to be like, all right, if you're going to take a bet on some of these names, which I haven't taken on a bet on the entire year, then the time to take a bet is when the charts have started to recover. They just delivered massive earnings, Lumentum, SMCI, Nbis, and CoreWeave, which provides a good runway for a lot of the other companies that are going to produce earnings. Bloom also had a crazy earnings a couple of weeks ago as well. And now you see kind of where it plays out from there. So that's my perspective. That is why we added those 3 positions. Again, those are trades. They're not meant to be long-term holds. Maybe they turn into long-term holds, but I do think the momentum is coming back to AI infrastructure. And as a result, you know, take your pick on the ones that make the most sense right here to potentially have as an investment. Dell right there, that's up 3.4%. I was thinking of SMCI, to be honest, because I think SMCI is dirt cheap. But once again, I think management, I don't even have any biases towards them. I think the market does. And until the market gets rid of that bias, this stock is still going to be discounted. I could see the stock going back to $50. I really could. It was at 50 in June. The numbers were just that good. And if anyone's in it and, you know, it gets up to 50, you deserve the reward for taking the risk. But the management part is still the thing that holds me back. But overall earnings were good. SMCI up 9%. Having said that, the AI names Very interesting. Also, notice I did not buy options on any of these names because I damn sure don't think I can time the momentum, rally coming back. So again, I technically I'm hoping they fall 10% because I will double the position on all three of those names and get them at a better price. But I do not want to speculate on any of these things with leaps or options because you just never know. Maybe Micron stays stuck at 900 for the year. It would still be up 200% year to date. No one could complain. But it's nice to just have shares at that point versus options that have an expiry where like the thing has to run. So that was the logic on it. Having said that, if the semi names are going to take a much needed swing to the upside, the software names maybe take a swing to the downside. So for people that kind of missed the past month of software rallies, Reddit from 140 to 160, Palantir from 120 to 170, Zeta from 19 to 29, ServiceNow from 80 to 124. I don't know if you get those prices again on software, but, and this is something that's going to be really interesting today to see because today is the first day in 2 weeks where we've actually seen in the pre-market a serious rally led by Nbis and CoreWeave on the semiconductor industry. And I'm hoping it lasts. Like when's the last time Bloom was up 10% in the pre-market? It's been a while, right? So I'm hoping it lasts when the market opens and it's not a sell the news. But if it does, I am very curious to see today, do the algos take down software? And if they do take down software, now we know software is not dead. These companies are incredibly important. The fact that ServiceNow could go from 80 to 120 and Palantir can go from 120 to 170 in a couple of weeks means it had nothing to do with Dario or Anthropic killing software. Figma went from 16 to 25. It had everything to do with sentiment. And so I honestly, if the software names take another 10% drawdown from here, if the semis have to go up 10% and we have to deal with that sort of long, short semi software trade, I wouldn't mind it because I've been buying software all year. I would not be upset to buy more software. Shopify went from 90 to 150 in a month and a half. That's a massive move on a company that's like a household name that got considered to be dead from agentic commerce because they operate in software. If Shopify goes back down to like the 130s, I don't think it goes back to like 90, but I mean, there's an opportunity there, right? So I think the opportunity in semis right now is to buy the momentum. The opportunity in software is to not go short, but to wait for those names to really show weakness. And again, I'm skeptical on if they're actually going to show weakness because maybe everyone gets to move together in unison. But if they do end up going down because the software names have to go up, same thing with the hyperscalers, maybe Meta, Amazon, and Google have to get hit. By the way, the Google headlines for why this was down 4%, I heard multiple people just say maybe it's the ATM. There is not an actual headline that I saw. So maybe Google was just unloading some shares on the public from their equity dilution program. Maybe that's why this happened. There was leadership changes last week. I don't know if that's enough of a reason for it to be affected this week. But what if Google goes back into the 320s or Amazon goes back into the 250s just because all the money's going back into semis? If that's the case, once again, these create really, really decent buying opportunities. Would you buy into neo clouds? I was thinking of buying IREN today because this one still hasn't really broken out from the absolute lows. I mean, it has recovered a chunk, but obviously from the very highs, it's still down a lot from that $70 range. But no, the only dips I did buy during July were Nbis and CoreWeave. And one of my Nbis dips was at 230. So that one is still trying to break even. The other Nbis dip I bought was at 178. And then CoreWeave was at 82. So I didn't buy any of the neo clouds, but I think those could still be included. I just bought them in July, so I didn't have to worry about them right now. I also think, these companies had massive earnings today. So the neo clouds that haven't produced earnings, like an IREN, hopefully when they have earnings, they can smash it just like Nbis and CoreWeave. Maybe that's the next one to get a multiple because compared to those two names, it just does not have the multiple that it has right now. Also, Oracle, by the way, Michael Burry shorted more Oracle yesterday at 145. This stock's now at 150. Oracle was at 114, right? 114 to 150, but Oracle's down from 250 in June. So I'm not buying more Oracle here. I've had Oracle at 135. That's one of the other SaaS names that I bought back in April. But like, is it the craziest idea to buy that into momentum after that's down as much as it is, even though it's up from the 114s? Like, I don't think it's that crazy along with the other semiconductor names. And so from that perspective, it seems like that's what we could hopefully get more momentum across the board. So those were the trades of last night. We'll see what happens. Expecting them to go down 10, 15% from here. If they do, we will double up on them. I just think the broader AI infrastructure story has only got it more and more evidence to be like correct and for the bulls to be on the right side of how this is playing out. I know Jensen's $500 billion thing seems weird, but in reality, it's not that weird. Like the financial institutions need to lend their money somewhere. Jensen's basically saying, hey, why don't I tell you where to put it? Listen to me because I'm a really smart guy. I'm the CEO of the largest company in the world. You guys will get an attractive return. I will book the chip sales and we'll get to finance these companies and you'll be able to build financial derivatives on top of it. Could it blow up? Yes, it could, if there's too much leverage and the underwriting is bad. If it doesn't, you're just talking about a lot of money going back into the ecosystem, which is why I think we got these price target raises on CoreWeave, JP Morgan, 110 to 120, Mizuho, 110 to 115, Piper Sandler, 151 to 153, Wells Fargo, 155 to 160, Baird, 100 to 130. I mean, you're seeing the entire sell side look at the numbers that CoreWeave put up yesterday, which we talked about earlier in the show, and just say, yeah, this is not something we can necessarily ignore. Not to say there's not concerns or there's issues that you can nitpick at and, when are exactly they're going to be profitable, all that stuff. But if this truly is our generation's industrial revolution and our industrial build out, then you're going to need a lot more of all this stuff. And again, these are not my favorite investments in the world because at the end of the day, you might not need some of this stuff. And then what's left is a business that doesn't have to produce sustainable cash flows. That's why I've been buying the software names all year, because I think a lot of the software names will be here in the next 10 years and they will have cash flows that compound. Having said that, if this cycle's not slowing down anytime soon, if it's not done by 2028, if you're going to be around for the next 5 years and investing, buying an AI semiconductor stock in 2026 and selling it in 2029, 2030, which is a 3-4 year investment, even if it's not a 10, 15-year investment at a reasonable multiple with a TAM that's growing massively because billions of people still don't use artificial intelligence. It's not the craziest thing in the world. It's just a question of not overpaying or getting levered up to the point where it's massively exuberant, which is what happened in July. And the fact that that is corrected, I think, is a bit more bullish about. So that is what we got. CoreWeave CEO on CNBC. Let's pull up to him right now and see what he had. Percent, and the market likes it, came in line with expectations.
As we continue to scale the business.
The margin inflection, make that clear.
Well, it's margin inflection. It's a lot of inflections, right? And we're there, right? And so, we brought on 500 megawatts of power, which is astronomical. Our installed base is now 1.5 gigawatts, right? We are a massive supplier of this. Enterprise companies are beginning to adopt our platform. Contract margins, the contribution margins, as you said, are rising. And one of the debates that has followed this industry has been on older generations of GPUs. And what we have, I hope, put to bed here is that those older generations of GPUs are going to have a longer useful life than anyone anticipated. They are going to contract for a longer term, and they are going to contract at a higher price. And we already are seeing that flow through our platform. Since Q2 closed, in the first 5 weeks, we contracted an additional more than $25 billion worth of contracts. And to put that in perspective, like $25 billion is virtually the size of our backlog a year ago. And so it gives you an idea of how much demand there is for our product and how much it's growing. NVIDIA and the financing companies stepping up and bringing this financing platform is a affirmation, as far as I'm concerned, of the business model, of the demand signals that everyone is beginning to see, that we've been talking about now virtually for years. It's really exciting for us.
But when I first met you, you told me that you thought they could, that these chips would be still valuable at the end of 5 years, so that you would have the residual after that. It turned out that was wrong. It turned out to be more valuable than when you bought them. And these are very old chips, 2020. Now you can make more money right down to 2029. I want to know, is this an NVIDIA chip and others might not be like this? Because it did seem that you mentioned over and over, I know that's a great partner, but I want to be sure people understand that this is the currency and not just any old chip.
Yeah. So the way that we view it is it's the confluence of three things, right? It's the NVIDIA GPU, which is the best solution in the market. It's the NVIDIA software, which is the CUDA platform, which allows this fungibility, which is so important. And then the final piece of it is it's delivered through the CoreWeave cloud, which has the best software solution in market to deliver this infrastructure. And when you bring the three of those together, you're able to extend the life of this infrastructure. You are able to charge a premium price. And as you said, we contracted a 2020 vintage architecture all the way out to 2029 at full freight. And that's just an amazing commentary on the demand in the market for compute and the demand in the market for CoreWeave's solution of how to deliver this compute.
I mean, I think that analysis is fairly accurate, and obviously the numbers are reflecting that analysis with the revenue growth being as strong as it is. And again, the exciting part about being an investor right now and understanding all the different opportunities that exist with compute is that with compute, you need optics, you need CPUs, you need GPUs, you need land, you need energy, you need so many different components to it. And that's why there's so many different players in the stack that are getting involved. Which is why when CoreWeave rallies based on really good numbers, it's not just about CoreWeave. It's about all the other players that are involved, which is why the entire semiconductor index is running today, along with Nbis up 17%. And, that might be the jolt of momentum that was needed for the market to once again wake up to being excited about the semis. By the way, T1 Energy, they also had a pretty good earnings. That's up 3%. They beat on revenue. They missed slightly on EPS with $200 million in revenue, but overall, looking like their guidance is very strong. By the way, the Fed rate hike probabilities have now dropped to a new 3-month low of 38% because of the CPI report. This was at 50% last week. It was at 65% the week before that. 38.1% based on the 3.4 CPI that we got today for those that are just joining. I do not think, even if oil stays at 85 to 90, which it feels unlikely given all the stuff that Trump has been saying over the past couple of days, that we're getting this hike. And so the sort of ugly September, August momentum to the downside that tends to happen every year, if we can avoid a hike, I think we at least kind of avoid some level of that drawdown, especially because, most of the perspective on a drawdown is coming from the idea that the Fed would hike. That's another reason why I bought some of the names that I bought today. It's like, well, if we don't get a hike, we don't have to get a cut. I'm not betting on a cut. But if we don't get a hike, a lot of the big, scary macro reasons for why a lot of the semis, which are more high beta and more susceptible to hikes, were discounted, that kind of is out the window. And that gives Micron and Bloom and SanDisk and SK Hynix a lot of room and momentum to run. And, that's where there can be opportunity. SK Hynix right there, that's up 5% in the pre-market. So not too bad. Exciting to see. For those that own CoreWeave and Nbis, let me know in the chat if you own it. Let me actually do a poll on this. We've never polled this. So you can say yes to this if you own at least one of the two. I'm going to bet it's like at least 50% of people here that own one of the two. And, you're like this is kind of what a lot of people have been waiting for. This is also a dip that was, I think, heavily bought. Do you own CoreWeave or... I'll throw Iren in there so no one chops my head off. Do you own... All right, so do you own at least one of them? It's not your day, Iren. You guys didn't have earnings. But I don't want to be walking down the street and I see one of you guys and I end up in a ditch. So, got to make sure we include that. SK Hynix up 5% right there. SMCI up 9%. I think these three names were some of the biggest names that were bought on the dip back in July as well. So, it's nice to see retail get rewarded with that. By the way, a couple other headlines right here. Speaking of investments in infrastructure and AI, so Jensen said $500 billion. Bank of America said $250 billion. Last night, Bank of America announces a new $250 billion initiative to invest in critical infrastructure across the United States over the next year. Cerebras has earnings today after the bell, so we will cover Cerebras. This was another thing I saw last night that I forgot to mention for why I bought Intel, Bloom, and DRAM this morning. It's like, hold on. It is just every layer of the stack. I mean, Bank of America probably, didn't feel comfortable doing the deal with Jensen because Bank of America and, first of all, they're just a much larger bank than the other financiers. They have a lot of other stakeholders to worry about. But they obviously want to make money, and they're seeing the opportunity to invest. And, even if they don't do it with Jensen, they probably want to put money into AI infrastructure because the ROIC should be relatively attractive. And so you're just going to have a lot more money flowing into the ecosystem, which is relatively bullish. Then you had this piece of news that I thought was really interesting. Norway's $2.3 trillion sovereign wealth fund bought $1.2 billion of SpaceX. So they were one of the institutional buyers. that bought SpaceX on the IPO. They also posted a record $184 billion profit as they revealed their SpaceX stake. We should be getting a lot more 13Fs over the next couple of days. I think on Friday, we should get pretty much all of them. But soon enough, we will see more of these 13Fs. And yeah, you're seeing some of the larger players take a chance on space. Rocket Lab, a little bit red in the pre-market, but has got back up into the 80s after the earnings. ASTS as well, which had a very bullish quarter. That stock's at 71. So space names theoretically could be coming back if SpaceX leads the way. SpaceX has been kind of flat since, I mean, it had the run after earnings, and then it's been kind of just like stuck in this 130, 135 range. It has yet to break out above 140. It touched 139.98, did not get 140. I think if it can get like 145, 150, it might be off to the races again, but we're also going to need to see a lot more of that excitement coming. Corning, that's up 5%. Air Test Systems, that's up 5%. And then AMD, that is up 2% as well. Nbis, almost 230. Again, Burry is short at 212. So it'll be very interesting today to see if he doubles down or continues to keep it going. And that's what we got. Do I have any Norwegians in the chat? That Sovereign Wealth Fund, man. That Sovereign Wealth Fund is massive. 70% of you own one of CoreWeave, Nbis, or IREN. Okay. Not bad. That means it should be a relatively decent day for a decent chunk of these portfolios. DRAM right there. That's up about 7% in the pre-market. The Googs is up 0.5%. Again, the biggest question for me today is, do the softwares and the hyperscalers have to fall for the semis to go up? And if they have to barely take a hit, then maybe everything can kind of participate together. Ed Zitron, who was on this morning, here's what he had to say about the state of the AI trade as well.
It's vendor financing, but they've been smarter than the Ciscos and the Lucents in the past by not actually becoming a bank.
Well, and I think that's an important part, in that the financiers that they're working with are the ones who are going to determine what the interest rate is that they lend on, as opposed to NVIDIA removing itself from that process, which creates more of a, traditional kind of lender-borrower dynamic, and such that, we will lend to you, but here's the price by which it will cost for you to actually borrow this money.
But the trick that NVIDIA does is they lend their credit to companies by not actually lending their credit. With Lambda and CoreWeave, I think they pay them $1.3 billion or more in these 4-year-long contracts. These contracts are then taken to financiers, and they say, hey, look, we have a customer. Even though that customer is also the vendor, NVIDIA also propped up CoreWeave's IPO. They invested over $2 billion in them, and I think in IREN as well, post-IPO. They are propping up these companies. They are helping them get funding, and they're backstopping deals as a means of, funneling money to themselves. And they've found a way around actually doing the financing themselves while basically getting all the benefits.
Whatever the machinations of how they're getting the capital, lending it, deploying it, what you hear is from somebody in CoreWeave's position, from any of the hyperscalers, from anybody along the food chain, is we are responding to demand signals that cannot be denied. There is more demand than supply. There is a scarcity trade. We need to build in order to find out, where the clearing level is for supply and demand. So I guess NVIDIA's point is you just have to get it out there, and the demand will take care of those issues.
But the thing is, the demand is mostly OpenAI and Anthropic. So Bloomberg actually reported a few days ago that 70% of Microsoft's AI revenue in fiscal year 26 was OpenAI, which also suggests that Microsoft 365 Copilot and Compute is a single-digit billion business. All of the demand from CoreWeave is OpenAI, Anthropic, Microsoft for OpenAI, and of course, Google for OpenAI, and then OpenAI for itself. Mm-hmm. These companies are basically just compute fronts for two unsustainable, unprofitable AI labs that are basically the only growth engine for hyperscalers at this point. Everybody's propping up what is really the end of the era of hypergrowth.
So I don't know if that's necessarily correct. It is not something you can deny that OpenAI and Anthropic have a majority of the compute demand. I think that's obviously fair, because they're growing like crazy and because they're the two leading frontier labs, which is why the market freaked out when Kimi K3 came out. It was only worth 30 billion. Why is Anthropic worth $1 trillion if the model is just as good, right? We went through that entire July meltdown. Having said that, two things. Number one, even if they are the majority of compute demand, let's take the argument at its highest level, you're still going to need compute. So then that begs the question, will Anthropic and OpenAI fail? like Zitron could be right that they're the only two companies that are producing 99% of the demand, which again, I think he's overstating a bit, but let's say that's correct. If those companies don't fail, I mean, it kind of doesn't matter because they're going to need the compute, which is why every time we analyze those companies and, we're begging to see the yes ones, as much as I might not personally love Sam Altman, which I think a lot of you guys also share some of that sentiment on, just because of some of the stuff he says, and Dario saying everyone's going to lose their jobs. Like, that stuff's not fun to see, but I'm rooting for those companies to succeed. Now, you have to analyze the bear case on how they fail, because a lot of the CapEx stuff can be a windfall if they do fail. But if they succeed, then regardless of if they're the majority of the compute demand, that compute demand still has to be supplied. And that's where the semiconductor trade comes into play. Also, by the way, if they fail and open source wins, you're still going to need compute. Like, that's the part of, I would love to talk to Zitron and be like, okay, let's say they do fail. It's not like people are not going to use large language models. If you're going to host them locally or build open source, but you're still going to need compute, which means the stock market will take a hit, but ultimately these companies will still have pretty strong earnings at the end of the day, which is important. The second response is, I don't know if it's just OpenAI and Anthropic that are the majority of demand. When you're looking at some of these Nbis numbers and CoreWeave numbers, you're looking at the backlog from a variety of these different companies in regards to Google's 82% cloud growth, Microsoft's RPO growth, which 25% of that they explicitly said is not OpenAI. Now, Bloomberg did report that 70% of their AI sales last year was OpenAI, but I think they're trying to diversify away from that because they know that they can't just rely on one company. I think the sovereign cloud, all the startups that are out there, you're starting to see a variety of different ecosystems. I mean, Lovable just passed like $500 million in ARR. Harvey, which is a legal AI company, it just raised at a $15 billion market cap or valuation. You're starting to see a lot of these companies that are being built on the OpenAI's, Anthropic's open source models that need demand, not to mention AWS scaling at 37% year over year. Having said that, yes, if OpenAI and Anthropic are the majority of everything, there are obviously some cracks in the trade that one can point out. I just think even if they are, if they're successful, they continue to win. Even if they're not, you still need semiconductors in general for the compute. And if they're not the entirety of the demand, which again, I just find it hard to believe they're like 99% of the demand, you still have a ton of momentum and excitement for all the hyperscalers that obviously need to supply all that compute. Tesla right there, that's up 0.5%. Amcor, that's up 5.46% as well. So having said that, we are going to see how the market reacts. This is the first day, I think, in 2 weeks that we've actually had a pre-market semiconductor rally. For those that missed it, I bought Intel, Bloom, and DRAM last night. Those are the new 3 positions to the portfolio as trades. You can scroll back about 20 minutes to explain why I made those purchases. CPI came in at 3.4%. Let's see in the next 20 seconds, can we get the semiconductors to hold their rally? Do the software and hyperscalers have to decline in order for them to rally? Is it a sell the news? Or can we hit new all-time highs on the S&P? Because we are about $2 away. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Wednesday, August 12th, 9:30 a.m. The stock market is now open. All right, wake your asses up. Let's get into it. S&P 500. We have opened green on the S&P 774. Again, we are very, very close to all-time highs. If that momentum is there, maybe she goes for a Nbis 227. That is up 16%. SpaceX above 136. That's up 2%. ASTS, that's up 2%. SK Hynix, that is up 6%. And it is green as we get into the market open. Google, that's green, up 0.5%. Shopify, first software name to flip green. First software name to flip green in the face of the semis. Micron, 909. There you go. We got a 5% move. I don't think we've seen Micron above the 900 sustainably in the past couple of weeks. So we got to see if we can hold above 900. We actually touched 920 right at the opening bell. Now at 910, but that continues to go green. CoreWeave, that's up 20%. Same from last night, continues to get momentum. Bloom is up 13%. AAOI is up 5%. Corning is up 7%. AEHR is up 3.7. Robinhood hit 97, now 95. Applied Digital, that's up 8%. Lumentum's up 9%. They crushed earnings. Intel back above 100. That is up 5%. Nokia, $10.40. That is up 10% as that continues to go green. UNH also goes green. The healthcare names participating. It's not like healthcare has to go down for semis to go up. At least we're not seeing that right now. Uber goes flat. Opendoor goes red. Nike is flat. SK Hynix up 5. Rocklab basically flat. I think Rocklab probably flips green if ASTS and SK Hynix are up. Palantir, are we down? We are down by 1%. We opened at 175. Let's see if that can flip. at all, and we can stay up there. Nbis, we are at 220. Okay, so Nbis loses about $10 from 229 at the open. Okay, so this is going to be really important. Do we lose 200? Do we lose 210? Like, can we hold on to any of this momentum? You're definitely going to get a bunch of people that probably bought over the past couple of weeks that are going to take some profits and sell because, you know, they're up a decent chunk on these earnings. So you definitely have some sellers, I would imagine, exiting. The question is, will buyers come in on the dip, if you even count that as a dip, because it's still up 13% on the day? Zeta, wow, 29.59. Yeah, she wants 30. She wants 30. Sandis, by the way, almost 1,400. She absolutely wants 30. 30 level resistance is 3,000 shares. There is zero resistance to get to 30. If the volume comes in, I think she'll get there. Microsoft at 500. I don't know why this is up 17%. I'm happy. It's up 17%. But I have no idea why. Did anyone see a headline on Bloom? If there's no headline, it's probably what Corey and Nbis said on the call, which is that, you know, we are constrained from supplying every single customer that we want to supply. If we had 2027 booked out, we would have sold it completely, is something that Arcady said today. But energy is a big constraint. And Bloom's fuel cell technology is one of the only innovative types of energy besides solar that has actually started to work and meaningfully get results with their partnership with Brookfield and Oracle. And maybe that's part of the reason. DRAM, that's up 7.3%. SpaceX, that's up 1%. Rocket Lab not getting a move up. It's kind of surprising. We'll see if that flips. 78.54. But that's red. T1 Energy, that's up 1. SK Hynix, that's up 5. Archer, that's down 4. Grab is flat. Joby's down 1. SoFi's up a little bit, 1.3. Hoodie goes red, 94. Well, not really red, but loses 95. It did touch 97 at one point. Bloom right there up 17. Microsoft losing it. Is Amazon losing it? Amazon is losing it. I would imagine Google is as well. Google's losing it. How about Meta? Meta's actually somewhat green. Okay, so classic software red, hyperscalers red, semis green. Kind of a typical day that we saw a few months ago. Many times. Nvidia is up 2%. Nvidia should be up based on those core earnings. Curious to see if it flips. If the semis go down, do the software names go back up again? But again, the software names have rallied. I mean, Atlassian was up 40% last week. Like, they've had a massive, massive run. So them relaxing is not that crazy. Yeah, pretty much all of them are red except Atlassian, Cloudflare, Oracle, which is kind of semi-oriented, Datadog, and then Snowflake, which are slightly green. SMCI should be going. Yeah, there you go. This stock, I mean, if you trust management and you don't discount that from your analysis, I don't understand why the stock is not $50. I mean, they increased guidance by 18 billion. Their revenue is going to be 75 billion. Their market cap's 23 billion. I mean, like, it was a very impressive quarter. But I think they messed up so much in the past with trust that, like, that's the reason. Because I can't find any other reason for why it's discounted. Like, if it had Dell's PE, it would be a $75 stock right now. But it's at 36, right? So there's got to be something that's affecting it. Zeta, she is very close. She is very close. 14 cents away. This one has been a nice, fun journey. SaaS name, undervalued. Nice community around it. And up 70% from the lows. I mean, people deserve to make money on this for taking the risk of betting on it. Just got to see if the market continues to give it that momentum. Qualcomm, that's up 1.5. Axon, that's up on the day. AAOI, is that kind of green? That goes flattish. It was more green. Nbis, we are holding on to 225. Okay, so fell to 216. Buyer stepped in at 216 pretty aggressively on Mr. Nbis. That was probably Nate, who just bought up like 10,000 shares to save us from going below 216. And hopefully we can hold on to this. Nbis 224. Palantir still red, and then Microsoft still red. Nbis resistance at 230 is insane, is it? Let's see. Dude, if we crack through that, can Burry just like go away if we do that? He's gonna double down today. That's the thing. And it would just be really nice for Nbis to continue making its move and like proving that this is very much real. 230, there's only 50,000 shares. It's not that. I mean, for a stock like Nbis, 50,000 shares is not crazy at all. I think it could easily get above that. Robin at 95.30. Corby, wow. Wow, wow, wow. 22%, $110. I think you're going to have a lot of traders come into the NeoClouds today. So there will be a bunch of people that use this momentum to trade, but it does feel this is more institutional in terms of the kind of structural level of push we're seeing right there. 23%. CoreWeave has added, let's do the math, 11 billion in market cap today. So pretty big move on a company that has 60 billion of market cap. Zeta, she's trying, about 15 cents away. Let's see if we can get up to 30. CoreWeave insider selling is annoying. It's definitely annoying. I think whenever there's a large amount of insider, I think they've dumped like 3 billion worth of shares in the past couple months. Nonetheless, dude, if the numbers are the numbers, I mean, insider selling is many times just noise. I mean, it's really got to be a scam type of company for the market to ignore the fundamentals that there's, because the liquidity of the public markets is just so deep and wide. I mean, you got the freaking sovereign wealth fund in Norway casually buying $1 billion of SpaceX. Like, this is why people want to take their companies public, because they have so much liquidity. And so if you're not a full-on scam, there's usually a buyer if you're executing. And CoreWeave executed, so that's why there's buyers. That gives the liquidity for insiders who took the risk to build a company to sell, which they deserve, because, you know, without them, there wouldn't be the company. But yes, it has been a bit more egregious in CoreWeave than in other companies. Regardless, if they continue to execute, I think the market continues to buy the stock. Also, Nbis dumped 12 million shares at 223 in Q2 on the public. 12.7 million shares at 223. So, yeah, they raised about $3 billion in Q2 from those ATMs. Meta goes red, Google goes red, Amazon goes slightly green. Zeta gets rejected at 29.80. Let's see if we can make another run for 30. And then Nbis 230 is hopefully on deck, but it's trying. Some of your photonics names losing some steam. Lumentum only up 4, probably why AOI is down officially on the day. Intel trying to get back above 100. The other reason I bought Intel is because the 15 billion was 18 times oversubscribed to 20 billion. And so the amount of money that was willing to pour into Intel to buy their stock at $99 to allow them to keep building, I think that's not retail, right? That, like, retail can't participate in that. That's a lot of institutions realizing this is going to be the TSMC of the United States, and they need the money to keep growing. And we think that this valuation is an attractive price to allow them to keep growing. So that was also part of the reason why I bought Intel. The last time that happened in the semiconductor space where a private offering was this oversubscribed was SanDisk at 500. And I remember SanDisk at 500 was already up 200% year to date. So people were like, you know, what's going on right here? Like who the hell is, you know, buying a secondary offering privately for a company that at that time, I think it was up like 12x from the absolute lows, or from when it IPO'd. So it felt weird, but then you saw the level of demand that was oversubscribing. And obviously it made sense, right? It's now at 1,300, got up to 2,300. And so whatever institutions were excited to buy those shares at 500 privately, they knew that, you know, memory demand is not slowing down, and there's probably a good chance this is going to continue going up. And I think maybe that's what we're seeing with Intel. Bloom 237, that's up 12%. Microsoft, that's down 1. Palantir down 2. Rivian, that's flat as well now on the day. The question is, who's going to dilute right here? Well, it's a good question. You know, if Nbis actually taps their ATM, it would be at the same price they did in Q2. I don't know if they did during the 140s. I would hope they didn't, because they had already raised so much in Q2, so maybe that doesn't need to happen. Google, I feel like, did it yesterday. Honestly, maybe it was Google. Microsoft, Amazon, and Meta don't really have ATMs, which, you know, I'm kind of surprised that Meta, Microsoft, and Amazon didn't announce those, right? Like, after Google announced 85 billion, you would think that the other guys would do it, and they haven't yet. I think Zucks is waiting for like the stock to get to like 750 before that. But yeah, it was really only Google from a institutional side in the Max 7 that did it. Micron losing some steam, 920 to 905, but still up 4%. What is CoreWeave's ATM? Does anyone know how much they have filed for their ATM? Because they and Nbis, I forgot the exact number. Iran is $6 billion. I think they have like $4 billion left. Nbis, I think, is around that same 3 to 4 billion around there. But yeah, CoreWeave definitely could issue shares today, and this would be an opportunity for them to do so. And ultimately, that's part of the business model of these neoclouds. Cypher, that's up 6%. APLD, that's also up 4%. Yes, the hood metrics should be out after close today. And so we'll see what happens. Kava had a good earnings. I don't know why the stock's up 17%. I don't know why the stock's up 17%. Jensen is CoreWeave's ATM. That's hilarious. So yeah, Kava, I mean, the earnings were good, but like, I think the market's a little excited for Kava. I don't know why they're that excited, but if you own it, congrats. I didn't see anything in the print to tell me why this thing, needed to rally this heavily. But it's good. You're having other parts of the market start to reflect more momentum. Coherence up 3, Amcor, that's up 3.6. ASTS is up 74. Mediterranean data centers, exactly. Where's Chipotle? Speaking of food, Chipotle 1.19%. This one's been affected by the whole salmonella breakout. So that has been an issue. Corning starting to lose some of its steam, but still up 4%. Okay, so we're 15 minutes into the market open. Software has not fully dumped, but it definitely went red. Semis have not pumped like crazy besides Nbis and CoreWeave, but they also haven't dumped and lost their momentum. CoreWeave still up 19, Nbis still up 17. I mean, if this is how the day ends, I don't think people would be too upset with this type of price action. SMCI, that is still making new highs, 15% up as that continues to go green. By the way, the Bank of America $250 billion investment is primarily for electricity infrastructure, energy and power, energy storage, related power infrastructure, and renewable generation, and for digital infrastructure, AI data centers, and computing capacity. They plan to invest that starting today until July 4th, 2027. So about an 18-month period that they want to begin investing this $250 billion into energy infrastructure. Rocket Lab, are we back to 80? We are back to 80. There you go. That flip was kind of likely, I think, given SpaceX was up. And now that's continued to green. AppLovin, I have not looked into the numbers at all. It's something I want to. This is a horrible day for price action because the software names in general are down due to the semis being up. Zeta loses 29. So it makes sense that it's below 320. If it actually loses 300, I don't know, dude. It might be an invest and investigate type of situation, but I also am just not familiar enough with their space because they don't just do ads. They do a software that administers and governs and then deploys the advertisement. And that's something I'm a bit, uneducated on. Like they don't have proprietary data like Zeta. They're obviously not, Meta or Google size of advertising. Reddit is pretty simple. Reddit shows you ads while you're scrolling, right? So I don't really fully understand AppLovin's business, but looking at their growth rate, forgetting what the business does, I don't think it deserves to be trading here. So it's one of those names to definitely take a look at in the software space. CoreWeave still up 19, NVIDIA up 1.8%. Do you have SpaceX? I do not have SpaceX. I do not own SpaceX. 63,000 on BTC, below 64.2. That one not really participating today, but it was at 65 on Sunday. SpaceX looking like it might get the breakout here. Now it did this yesterday and then it got rejected and fell by like $10. So a break over 140 would be exciting. Rocket Lab potentially following in that space. Yeah, Zeta lost it all. Zeta lost it all, but the fact that it closed above 29 yesterday, I was pretty freaking impressed. Micron, okay, back to 915, fell to 904. The neoclouds saved the market. I don't think it's an understatement to say the neoclouds might have saved the semi trade because like ASML earnings didn't pump anything, TSM earnings didn't pump anything, AAOI earnings didn't pump anything. Like I think you needed Nbis and CoreWeave to just smash their numbers. AMD's earnings didn't help. And that's what kind of got the semis at least a little bit back on track. SK Hynix 150. as that continues to go green. Now, having said that, this could simply be a nice little one-day rally, and then we go back to the semis. I don't want to say dumping. I would rather say consolidating, because they haven't been dumping the past 2 weeks. They've just been flat. Like, all the volume has been sucked out of them. So, you know, if Intel wants to keep consolidating in the 90s and Bloom wants to keep chilling out in the 210s, then it is what it is. DRAM basically from 45 to 50. It's been stuck in that range. Or maybe this is the start of something new, as Troy and Gabriella would say in High School Musical. Google, did we go red? We went red, 343. Someone just bought 1.2 million of NVIDIA calls expiring on September 11th, 240 strike. 240 strike for Mr. Nvidia. Someone did buy those $780,000 worth of DJT calls for November. So we have to see, you know, kind of where that volume is coming from for DJT. Wow, Nbis, within like a minute of looking at the chart, it went from 223 to 229.50. It touched 230.99 for a second, which means we broke through 230. So there were 50,000 shares at 230. That got broken through. That means I think we're getting back to 230. If it actually touched 230.99 at 231, there's 5,000 shares waiting. Yeah, this should be able to break through. This should absolutely be able to break through. CoreWeave at 107 got to 111.82. Could not break 112. There it is, 230. There she is. There she is. Michael buried, baby. Buried. 230, 170. Oh, and she runs, she runs. We know this about Nbis, right? When she runs, she runs. When she dumps, she also dumps. But when she runs, she runs. And Burry shorted it right before she was getting ready to run. I mean, maybe it's actually happening. Nbis 231, CoreWeave 107. Micron also following with it, 906. As that continues, or sorry, 926, as that continues to go green. Also, we didn't talk about the biggest story of the day. We did not talk about the biggest story of the day because we had so much stuff going on. But when I tell you guys this story, let's just say you're probably going to get a little bit more bullish. You're probably going to get a little bit more bullish. Are you guys ready for this? Nbis at 230, Micron 925. SpaceX 137, Rocket Lab, now it's rocking and moving. NVIDIA also moving, 223. SPY, we're like $3 away from an all-time high. The problem is Nbis and CoreWeave are not going to get the SPY to all-time highs. It's got to be NVIDIA. The Max 7 are not really helping today. Micron is in the S&P, so that could help a little bit. So is SanDisk, but the NeoClouds are not in there. Where's Marvell? Marvell just got into the S&P. Marvell 212. It's not doing too much today. No, it is. Oh, that was a weird glitch. It just went down to 212. 223. That's up 5%. So you're going to need NVIDIA to kind of carry it. Micron now almost 930. There she is. 930. As that's up 7%. Okay, so here's the actual big story of the day that's not going to make you want to turn as bearish if you have been doubting a little bit of what's going on in the market. It has nothing to do with AI, has nothing to do with, you know, the broader infrastructure build out. It has to do with capital gains tax. President Trump is reportedly weighing a capital gains tax cut ahead of midterms, including the idea of indexing capital gains to inflation before taxes are calculated. There has not been a major U.S. capital gain cut since 2003. And the argument here is that if someone bought a business or stock position for $2 million and sold it years later for $5 million, the nominal gain would be $3 million. 5 minus 2 is 3. But if cumulative inflation over that period was 25%, what Trump wants to do is take the inflation adjusted cost basis, and we have an objective measure on what cumulative inflation is. It's called CPI, which would rise to 2.5 million, leaving only 2.5 million of taxable real gains instead of 3 million, which means you would save 500,000. So effectively, Trump is trying to do two things. Number one, lower the capital gains tax, which if you live in Singapore or Dubai, you probably don't care about this, but in the United States, we really care about this. And obviously, if you're in Singapore and Dubai investing in US stocks, then it matters what US citizens have to pay when it comes to capital gains tax, which would be massively bullish because, at the end of the day, that's more money that people have than to invest into stocks. And then number two, he's trying to inflation adjust it, which means the way I think he's going to do this is like under the Biden era, inflation went up like 25%. And he's going to be like, I'm giving you that 25% back in capital gains because Biden stole 25% away. Like, I think that's the way he would frame it. And as a result of that, when you sell, you keep more money and you don't have to sell as much. And you can put most of that money back into the stock market. Nbis right there, 227, getting rejected at 231, but got up to 231.95. So, look, this would actually be for asset holders. Now, for our U.S. debt, that's a different question because we already don't collect enough tax revenue to pay our debt. So I don't know what that means for the almost 40 trillion in debt that we have. But for individual people that are sitting on massive capital gains that want to reinvest their money, it will create some selling pressure, obviously, because people will sell because they have less taxes to pay. But the money that they save, they'll just put right back into the market, and it'll re-incentivize investment, probably re-incentivize investment from a lot of institutional investors. And obviously, that's pretty bullish for equities. Coherent right there, up 5%. It means we go bankrupt. It probably means we go bankrupt, but hopefully, we'll all be gone by then. That's that's not even our kids' problem. Not even our kids' problem. That's probably our kids' problem. Like our great grandkids, they can deal with this shit. But until then, we're stacking up the debt and keeping it moving. So the point is, you've got oil hopefully coming down. This Iran war coming to an end. Earnings growth massive. Jensen's getting $500 billion to invest in the AI infrastructure names. CapEx is not slowing down. And now you've got Donnie T, who's probably doing this to juice the midterms, but it is what it is. That's a political thing. At the end of the day, I'm an investor. And whatever the policy is the policy I have to abide by. If he's doing whatever he has to do to keep investors happy by reducing capital gains, that could also be another argument to keep the bull market going. S&P 500 right there, 772, 88 losing 773. So we're going to see what ends up happening. But there's just a lot more reasons, I think, to be a bit more bullish on how this plays out. The 10-year is also down today, thank goodness, 4.64. It was almost at 4.7 yesterday. So at least that's taking a breather from oil as well. Tesla gets a little bit of a move down, 327, 1.52%. All the Mag 7s continue to go down as well. He's really doing it for himself, so he doesn't have to pay the tax on all the insider trades him and his buddies have been doing. You're probably right about that. You're probably right about that as well. That's true. Trump trades like 5,000 times every month, or at least his advisors trade 5,000 times. Dude, that's never happened in the history of the presidency for an active president to have a portfolio manager that's literally day trading stocks. Like this was disclosed last month in the Presidential Office of Ethics. Like the fact that that's actually happening, it's kind of crazy, but it also means that there is an incentive from the most powerful man on earth to be on the side of investors. Palantir loses 170. Loses 170. Okay, so I kind of thought the software names would take a breather today if the semi names were going up, and so far that prediction has played out to be correct. Workday, Palantir, ServiceNow, Salesforce, all of them going down. ServiceNow down 4%. As that is getting hit. Again, these names rallied a lot over the past couple of weeks, so it's also not crazy for them to take a breather. Why is every stock a she? Because she drives me freaking crazy, dude. That's why every stock. I'm kidding. That's a joke. That is a joke, okay? She does drive me crazy though. But no, look, I call everything a she. Like someone asked me yesterday, ChatGPT is also a she. I don't know why. It's always like, what am I supposed to say? He's going for it. He wants it. It's like, no, it's like she wants it. 230. She wants, it's just more natural for me to say she versus he. I think a lot of you guys would make fun of me if I framed it as he. So But this has always been natural for me to say she. That's just how I think of this stuff. Bloom Energy up 12.32% as that continues to go green. I have a name for my ChatGPT. Yeah, my mom has a name for her ChatGPT as well. She told me the other day, I'll tell you, it's Shammy. I don't know why she calls it Shammy. I think she was like listening to some podcast or something. She was like, yeah, my ChatGPT's name is Shammy. I was like, okay, Shammy. I don't have a name for it. I just ask her about my life every single day. So, but in the chat, if you have a name for your ChatGPT or your Claude or whatever, grab right there, down 1.2, Joby down 2, Rivian down half, Qualcomm 164. All right, Corey Van Nbis losing a little bit of steam, but obviously still massively up for the day. Mine is called a MIT. Oh my gosh. My ChatGPT name is Claude. That's hilarious. Thoughts on SpaceX launching GrokBot and Grok 4.6 next week? Okay, so this is actually a good topic. GrokBot launched yesterday. GrokBot, from my understanding, is called is effectively Claude co-work. It's basically the same thing that Claude and ChatGPT have been doing on the non-coding side of enterprise businesses and small teams, like if you have to build presentations or automate workflows or things of that nature instead of just pure coding. So yeah, I think it's bullish for SpaceX. My question so far as it loses 18 is how many people are going to use the Grok bot, right? And I mean, if the Grok bot is like going to actually take away market share from the other co-working LLMs that are out there, great. If not, then once again, it goes to the question of like, is Grok really being used? Now, Cursor in combination with Grok, I think is selling really nicely into the enterprise, but it begs the question, how much are enterprises willing to switch from their foundation models or their open source models to Grok, especially when you have Meta that is coming to the picture. So I don't know, man. I'm not buying SpaceX for their AI bot. Like, if you're buying the Anthropic IPO, which likely is going to happen in October, you're buying it for Claude and the value of Claude. I think you're buying SpaceX for, honestly, orbital space data centers. Like, that's really the big growth story. Obviously, Starlink is amazing, but Starlink is not alone going to justify a $5 trillion market cap. It's AI infrastructure more than anything versus the actual AI they're building. Unless Grok 5 is just leaps and bounds better than everything else, which I'm a bit skeptical of. So if that's not the case, then GrokBot should be important, but I don't know if it's going to be the biggest thing in the world to change. Amit, I sold all my Marvell today. What price did you buy it at? Marvell at 222. I mean, unfortunately, Jensen's Marvell $1 trillion comment has created a ton of bag holders on Marvell, and it is what it is. But at least it's rallied from the lows of 150 up to 222. It's just a lot of people are trading this thing with 300s, and it might take some time for it to get back there. Wow, NVIDIA actually trying to get up here to 224. SanDisk 8%. Micron not stopping. Well, Micron down from 930, but at least it's back above the 800 levels. And you're seeing a bigger move. I named my AI Aggie the Agent. You guys have some interesting names. Like when my mom told me she named it Shammy, I was like, I don't know where you got this from, but like she talks to it every day. Dude, my dad, I saw my dad the other day. We were just sitting at someone's house, and I was sitting next to him, and the other person was talking. He took out his phone. Or sorry, we were in the car. We were taking my mom's sister who came from India. We were taking them to New York, and I was sitting in the back seat, and I looked at his phone, and someone had asked a question about like car manufacturing in America, my uncle, and my dad goes to ChatGPT, and he was like, where are the most cars produced in America? And just seeing him do that, I was like, damn, bro. And ChatGPT is like saying, well, Detroit and the history of Detroit and auto manufacturing. I was like, oh my goodness, like my dad didn't know what ChatGPT was 5 months ago, and now he's like going to it to ask a question that someone asked out loud in the car instead of Google, and he's having an AI experience. It's just, and he's never going to stop using it, right? Because it's like it just provides such a valuable experience in terms of giving the answers and educating him on stuff, and then he can talk about it, which is what all of us do every day. So it's quite incredible to just see the level of adoption that's being used. And the best thing about ChatGPT is you don't have to spell correctly, because my dad definitely spells incorrectly. I spell incorrectly all the time. So you can have like broken sentences, and the AI will just figure out what the hell you're trying to say and then give you the actual answer. Whereas like web Google searches with blue links could never do that, right? Like we actually lived through that era where you had to click on a link to get information. Like what? No, I'm not going to click on someone's blog to learn about something. Like I should just get the information, and that's what's happening. Nbis back to 230, third time today where it's hitting 230. And you're seeing more of this momentum. My mom is the same. I showed her Gemini. She's super impressed and uses it daily. Now, Gemini just passed 1 billion users, by the way. Gemini now is 1 billion monthly. So I know Semi-Analysis has been saying that Gemini is cooked in the enterprise, but at least on the consumer side, they have 1 billion monthly actives that are using the product now. CPI again came in at 3.4. I'm trying to see if we have any other macro data. We don't have home sales. We had that yesterday. I'm trying to see if we can get an Iran update. Oil is still slightly up there at 83 today. I named mine after my dog, Wanda. I want a dog so badly. I cannot explain to you guys how much I want a dog. I just know I can't take care of it. But I want a dog so badly. Oil actually just fell, 82.60. Okay, so you're seeing oil come down, which is probably helping Micron and Nbis stay up. Oh, wow. Google just introduced a new foldable phone. Did you guys know about this? $1,800, or sorry, $1,900, $1,899. $1,899. Okay, let me see if I can pull up. Nbis 231.40, trying to go for 232. Google foldable phone. Interesting. I am not the biggest fan of foldable phones. They should still try to go after it though, because if people want it, then they want it. Oh, I think they're having a Pixel event today as well. So that might, yeah, they're introducing the Pixel 11 today. And that could be part of the reason they're introducing the foldable phone. Pixel 11 Pro Fold is what they introduce. Okay, let me pull this up. Pixel 11 Pro Fold. Does anyone have a foldable phone? Does anyone in the chat actually own one of these? The Pixel 11 Pro Fold will cost $1,900. This is what it looks like. It low-key looks like an iPad, bro. It looks like an iPad mini. It looks like an iPad mini right here. Nbis is still 229. S&P is still green. Oil still down. That's what it is. Software is dying once again for the semis to go higher. Zeta, Palantir, ServiceNow, all of them. But there you go. Yeah, dude, I'm never buying a foldable phone. I don't see the vision in it. I really don't. I mean, I see the vision. I just think it's kind of stupid. Like, I don't really think that many people need that big of a screen. Like, the iPhone Pro Max, like 6.5 inches. Like, I don't need that big of a foldable screen. Like, I don't get it. But all these companies probably should go after it. Kava, that's now up 12. It was up 17. Corning's up 4. SMCI up 14. Says the dude with 6 screens. Well, I would get to see ChatGPT's responses in larger text on a foldable phone. I don't know, dude. I don't know. 48 megapixel sensor camera. The smartphones themselves are at 900, but the actual the foldable is at 1900. Countries are calling on Iran to listen to its people, take meaningful steps towards ensuring respect for human rights. Okay, I don't think the United Nations telling Iran to behave is going to change anything. It's always so funny to me when these countries like try to issue public statements, be like, we reject what Iran has been doing to their people. It's like, well, that's not going to stop them from doing it. So a lot of this stuff is just virtue signaling. We're not going to get them to. What we need is a real deal. Whatever the U.S. has to capitulate for, we're going to have to. I mean, at this point, it's been 5 months. We're not going to get everything we want out of Iran. We're not getting regime change, obviously. We're probably not going to get them to get rid of all their nuclear weapons. I mean, we're probably going to have to give up sanctions relief to pay back for all the shit that we caused. Like, there's going to have to be some. Now, they're going to have to give up some stuff. But again, A, Iran doesn't care about their people. B, Iran has massive hyperinflation. They don't care about their economy. C, Iran loves that U.S. markets react to oil prices as intimately as they do. And Iran controls oil prices with effectively controlling 20% of the world's crude supply. So we're going to have to give up something if we want this deal to like become real. 231 on Mr. Nbis' SPY. That's 772. Iran, is that still up on the day? Iran up 9%. That still continues to go green. Cisco is getting earnings today along with Cerebras. Cerebras, this will be their second earnings, I think, after going public. Yeah, this is the second one. 247.98. They tanked on the first one. They felt like 170 on the first one. So Cerebras is actually up pretty nicely from its IPO. It's down from that 380 high. Oh, by the way, speaking of Cerebras, so Kathy's been buying Cerebras. Also, she bought a ton of Rocket Lab yesterday. 200,000 shares in RKKK for Rocket Lab, 64,000 in RKQ, and then you have 27,000 shares in RKX. So a decent chunk of Rocket Lab. She hasn't bought RKLB in a while. Nbis is 232, but it looks like that's kind of her SpaceX proxy for buying it. SpaceX continues to make a move, 138.40. I mean, she's obviously bought a ton of SpaceX as well over the past couple of weeks. No way. No freaking way. There's no way this is happening. Oh my goodness. Josh Kushner and Bob Iger are buying the Lakers for $12 billion. Whoa. That is kind of crazy. Jay Kush and Bob Iger buying the Lakers for $12 billion. Well, now we know why he's leaving Disney. I mean, and he has a very close relationship with the NBA, Bob Iger. ESPN, owned by Disney. ESPN obviously has, hosted the NBA games so many times. Let's get a little bit of coverage on that. That is unbelievable. I think this is the highest NBA franchise deal we've ever seen. I think the Warriors are like $8 billion. So that's bigger than we've ever seen in the NBA. Let's pull this up right here.
A pay cut here for Austin Reeves.
Well, Malika, certainly it follows the example that's been set by Jalen Brunson in New York. Retrofit their team, the win seasons and Grimes.
Okay, this clip is not talking about. I thought this clip was talking about the $12 billion deal. I'll try to find a different clip for that. That broke 11 minutes ago. Wow. I wonder what that means for the sports industry in general. Micron 925, Nbis 234 as that continues to go higher. Bezos is buying Liverpool, right? Dude, what is Bob Iger's net worth? I'm going to take a guess. I have no idea. I'm going to guess his net worth is like 25 billion. I feel like I'm going crazy there. Bob Iger. Okay, yeah, I was going crazy. This guy's not even a billionaire. How does he have the money for this shit? How is he? I mean, yeah, I felt like that was a little aggressive there. I thought he's been at Disney for like 20 years, but no. Okay, so he's worth 700 million. Interesting. That's kind of crazy. That is kind of crazy. Bitcoin. He's obviously got in some financing to make that happen. Bitcoin trying to get up to 64. I don't think there's a stock trade to benefit off like the Lakers. With the Knicks, it was MSG. And obviously, given they won the championship, that helped Madison Square Garden a lot. I don't think for the Lakers there's an obvious trade. Microsoft losing it today, 500 to 494. Half cash, half Disney. Oh my God. Someone just bought 1.1 million of Nbis 330 calls. We saw someone buy Nbis 380 calls last week, expiring November 2026. November 2026. You know, if Nbis actually gets up to 330, CoreWeave's probably going to be closing in on 150, and Burry is going to be squeezed. Lakers are being sold to American businessman Josh Kushner and Bob Iger for $12 billion. Kushner and Iger were involved in the expansion process in Vegas. They pivoted to make an aggressive offer to buy the Lakers from Mark Walter, who had purchased a controlling interest in the team from the Buss family last year. That's well, technically Amazon. Yeah, Hollis is right. Amazon benefits from the NBA based on Amazon Prime. Disney also does with ESPN. It's just, you know, Disney has a lot of other components to their stock. Disney, that stock down 0.5%. Oh, speaking of Leopold, bro, as ASO says, Leopold, is that you? Leopold invested in another company yesterday. Private company, no, not private company. It's a public Taiwanese stock. Taio Yuden. He took a stake in Taio Yuden in Taiwan, electronics maker, or sorry, Japan. I don't know what the hell they do because I haven't looked into it, but it looks like they're a global component manufacturing company for MLCC, which we talked about a month ago, multi-layer ceramic capacitors. That's actually an important part of the GPU infrastructure. So, I mean, it's a very niche picks and shovels play, but that is the newest stake that he has taken. Kava, that's up 12%. Lumentum's up 6%. Dell's up 4.5%. Intel's up 3%. The semi-trade's not dying out today. It's not really losing its momentum. ServiceNow down 4%. Palantir down. Again, all the software names are taking a hit. Palantir back above 170. Space is also really moving. 139.36 on SpaceX. That one really looks like 140 is on the table. Let me check the resistance there. Nbis crushing 234. 140 is 240,000 shares. It's definitely a lot, but given SpaceX's volume is 30 million in less than an hour, I feel like that's going to be kind of easy if it has the volume to break through. Nbis 233. That's up 20%. That means Burry is basically down about 20% on the short now, as that has flipped pretty heavily. How much are the Dodgers worth? How much are the Dodgers worth? Dodgers are worth $8 billion. Wow, the Lakers are now worth more than the Dodgers. The Lakers are not as good as the Dodgers, but I think the Lakers, obviously as a brand in LA, still have a ton of excitement. Ed Yardeni raises his S&P 500 forecast to 8,400 from 8,250. He says earnings continues to go up. He believes 10,000 by 2029 end of year. He thinks S&P EPS can get to 550 by then. He thinks there's a 20% probability to a recession, which could stem from a bear market, which goes back to that K-shaped economy thing that people continue to worry about when it comes to this market. Okay, I mean, wow. Oracle call buyers coming in 165 strike, $5.5 million of calls. Dude, the options flow on the high beta names today in particular is coming back. Intel, Nbis, Oracle, Nvidia, 1.2 million. Like, there's no way in hell Nvidia says we're going to get $500 billion worth of financing for this AI build out and then have bad numbers on their earnings. Like, it's just not possible. It's just not possible. I mean, those earnings are going to be unbelievable. The question is, will the market give them any love for it. 223 on Nvidia right now. Dodgers were bought for $2 billion in 2012. Wow, that was crazy. Where do you see the volume flow? So the resistance, at least on Robinhood, I just look at the order book. You can do it on Webull, but any platform kind of shows it to you. The actual option flow, we have a news terminal on this channel, cactusjack.com, linking it in the chat. You can link to it, sign up through WhatsApp for free. And we source a lot of these option flow alerts. The website is called Bullflow. The website is called Bullflow. There's a bunch of these websites, but Bullflow is the easiest one to kind of look at. The premium. 5 million of calls just came in on the QQQ. Goodness, bro. Yeah, today's not a day to go short. If you're trading, even if some of these trends look ugly, you buy the dip. You don't short here. I mean, even software, I don't know if it's a full short. Look at that. ServiceNow bouncing off 121, Palantir bouncing off 169. Like, if you have that much call buying coming in, even the ugliest of dips aren't going to turn into a downtrend. At least it doesn't feel like they would turn, unless there's like news specific catalyst on that stock. Uber got a bounce from 76 up to 77. Boeing's only down 1. Hims, after a crappy earnings in terms of the price reaction, only down 2. I mean, it doesn't feel like it's the same type of choppiness that we had over the past couple of days when it comes to the semis. Micron right there, 922. Is Citron Research still short on Palantir? They went short a while ago. I don't think we got an update from them. I would imagine they're not short anymore. Burry is still short as of 2 days ago. Dude, that means he's short Palantir. He's short Oracle at 145. He's short Palantir from like 120. He's short freaking Nbis at 211. He's been underwater on the SOX shorts, the iShares Semiconductor ETF, for like 4 months. Like, the time for him to get rid of all the shorts was July 29th. I don't know if we revisit those lows, man. Those were excruciatingly ugly lows. Accelera, by the way, diluted by 200 million yesterday, and they're still breaking even. Accelera diluted by a tenth of the market cap today or yesterday. They haven't officially done it, but they filed to do it, and they're still green. I mean, that's how much momentum is in this market right now. For us to get back to July lows, we need an event. We need like a reacceleration of aggression with Iran, which Trump's been doing everything to calm that down. We need earnings to suck, which has not been happening. Why isn't SoFi ripping? You know, it's a good question. Honestly, I don't know. The fact that rate hike probabilities went down today and SoFi's down is just a little confusing. Like, it should be higher. So I don't know. I really don't. That one just might have to take some more time to officially play out. But, you know, the trajectory for a SoFi to do really well is in place. And end of year is hopefully where we see that happening. This is what Trump said yesterday on Iran.
I don't worry about anything, to be honest. Whatever it is, you know my attitude. Whatever. How can you trust Iran at all? And they tried to kill you, Mr. President. Why? Are you saying I trust Iran? I'm the last person to trust Iran. They've lied to me constantly. We have total control over the Hormuz Strait right now. They don't have control. We have total control. We own it. And at some point, maybe they'll do something and then they get blown away. But right now, we're in a very good position. We have a country that has been the bully of the Middle East for 50 years. It's really 51 if you think about it. We've been saying 47 for 4 years. And they're no longer the bully of the Middle East. Thank you very much, everybody.
So again, you know, even though he's saying, like, I don't trust Iran, and there have been many reports of assassination attempts on Trump from Iran, like, he's not saying I'm going to put boots on the ground and bomb Karg Island like he was saying 3 weeks ago. Like, it's a full 180 in terms of his attitude with Iran. Like, it really is an entire shift in terms of the rhetoric that he's been using. And it's a lot more calmed down and he's not buddy, but he's also not like, yeah, I'm going to kill them. It's more so just like, look, we're trying to get a deal done. And he's annoyed that they're not negotiating in a way that he would want them to negotiate, but he's also not threatening them. Remember, 2 Fridays ago was supposed to be the largest attack since World War II on Iran. That didn't happen. And it didn't happen probably because, Bessent tapped him on the shoulder and said, sir, like, this is not going to play out well for the credit markets or for the stock market. And so now it's a matter of time. It's literally a matter of time for this deal to happen, no matter how they frame the conditions of the deal. When it does happen, 235 on Nbis, almost 236, I think stocks are going to like it. Oil is definitely going to like it. The 10-year is definitely going to like it. CoreWeave 109. We just got to see if it happens. So Meta pumped yesterday for no reason. It looks like Meta is dumping today for no reason. Meta went to 615 yesterday for apparently no meaningful reason. 587 right here for no reason either. Is Meta the buy here? I mean, look, Meta is my second largest Mag 7 holding behind NVIDIA. So yeah, I think so. I think it's going to have a 40% in a month movement eventually, just like Microsoft did, just like Amazon did, just like Google did last year. The risk to Meta is these stupid lawsuits that are actually starting to pile up into the billions that they have to pay. Now, there's still parking tickets for Meta, but like it's still annoying. I wasn't happy with the earnings in terms of Zuck's explanation of Meta Compute, so that's still annoying. But at the end of the day, they're trading at 18 times earnings, growing at 30%. One of the most important advertising platforms on the planet. I mean, I don't know. It bounced from 520. I don't know if we touch 520 again. If we do, then I think a lot of the other Mag 7s are going to be falling. But Meta's $1,000 stock. It's going to happen. Question is when. And as annoying as it felt to buy Microsoft at 350, 370, 380, it feels the same to buy Meta, but this is not a company that's slowing down anytime soon. And Meta Muse is actually very encouraging. If they start to really pick up enterprise adoption of their models, even if they don't make money off of it, the things they can sell on top of it, WhatsApp barely monetized when it comes to AI B2B services. There's a lot of ways for Meta to grow. So continuing to remain bullish on Meta. Marvell, that's up 5. SanDisk up almost 9% here. Almost 9% on the day. Amazon, are we still at least holding 270? Just went below it. So 287, which I think made a lot of people think 300 was on the card soon, has been rejected. I haven't touched it in the past week. Still nice to not be stuck in the 230s, but this one might take some more time to get there. I did not sell my Microsoft, no. It's not a massive position, though. Bought it at 413, bought it at 85? Same thing with ServiceNow. It's not going to make a dent. Meta and NVIDIA will make a dent. And so it's been nice to see NVIDIA finally come back. Up a casual, what was it, year to date? I think it's like almost 15. It's still, yeah, NVIDIA's up 18%. I mean, it's beating the S&P. It's up 18%. And, for people that bought the dip at 170, 180, it's up a lot more since then. So it's not like NVIDIA's stuck in the low 200s anymore. The question is, 240, 250, is that something we see by end of year? HPE, that's up 3. Reddit's down today as a software company. Poet did not have earnings yesterday. I think that's next week. Ondas has earnings tomorrow. And then Serves Robotics is up 3% after Uber selling their stake in them. Let's hear from our boy Gil Loria at D.A. Davidson on CoreWeave yesterday.
They have to borrow. And I think that what investors are seeing today is they took a small step in the right direction. Their operating margins, which were only 1% last quarter, are now 5%. So that's not a lot. That still means a 1% return on invested capital, but it's a step in the right direction.
So a step in the right direction. Is it a durable step, a long-term step, Gil? Or is this just, they're taking advantage of what right now is just kind of a crazy market?
Let's put it in perspective. So if I'm saying they're getting about a 1% return on assets, their borrowing cost has actually just gone up. It was closer to 8%, and now it's close to 10%. So you're borrowing at 10% to get a 1% return. That's not good news. So again, they have to improve the returns very significantly and they have to reduce the cost of capital, which recently has actually gone the wrong way. That's why we're questioning the whole category, is that this is like borrowing on margin to buy treasuries. Borrowing at 10% to buy a 5% return isn't a good idea. And for these guys, again, they're still getting a 1% return. So and they're at a 10 billion revenue run rate scale. So it's not like there's a tiny upstart, and they're still generating pretty low returns on that. Slightly better than before, but still not good enough to justify their existence.
Well, it's a fair bear argument. Again, the bulls would point towards the backlog and the growth of that backlog relative to the growth of that capex, which is, a lot. It's orders of magnitude higher than what their capex is growing at. But nonetheless, you could obviously make the argument for the return on invested capital that they're getting inside of the NeoCloud in and of itself.
What do you make of kind of the splashy announcement that Jensen Huang made yesterday, the idea of trying to raise what is effectively a $500 billion financing pool, if you will, for presumably those folks who are going to be buying its chips. But the idea is that some of these companies that are dealing with the higher cost of capital or maybe no access at all would potentially have access. Does that not help CoreWeave, or is this just basically you're still paying the same cost of capital, just maybe to a different set of lenders?
That is exactly what Jensen's trying to do. He's seeing CoreWeave have to borrow at 10%. He said, I need to do something about this. And so if I guarantee some of these loans, I can reduce the cost of capital for companies like CoreWeave. So he is trying to help them. The price is, of course, that you can only buy NVIDIA chips. So he's not doing it out of the generosity of his heart. He's doing it so he can see the whole ecosystem with capital that's tied to buying NVIDIA chips, not Broadcom chips, not AMD chips, not ones made by Intel, but NVIDIA chips. And so that he's getting something for that backstop. That backstop, though, is a financial commitment. If these data centers fail, the loan goes back to NVIDIA. So there is a cost, at least down the line, for them making this type of guarantee. But for now, they have $60 billion of net cash. They're going to generate $200 billion in the next 12 months. He needs to do something with that cash, and guaranteeing his customers' loan seems to be a good way for him to make sure that they keep buying NVIDIA and don't buy anything else.
So, which is why I think NVIDIA, after earnings, this might be the quarter finally where it actually makes a move, because he just guaranteed his revenue. You got the banks to agree to it, and then obviously the NeoClouds get the financing that they need. Here's the Lumentum CEO who's on right now explaining the quarter that they had yesterday.
David, good morning. Good to see you.
And you as well. Let's just start off. I mean, you raised Q1 revenue guidance to sort of that $1.25 billion midpoint. It's more than a quarter ahead of the target you laid out only not that long ago at your OC. So things are accelerating. And I'm just curious, I guess, is it more customers? Is it bigger orders? Is it the same number of customers and the hyperscalers you had before?
Look, you've been talking about it all morning. I think the demand signal that we're seeing is better than we expected. As you correctly said, we were talking about this just a few months ago at the Optical Fiber Conference where we had an analyst day. And here we are less than 6 months later, and the demand signal that we're seeing from the hyperscalers is just incredible. So we see really no end in sight to the demand.
I think you said on the call you're now much further behind on ultra high power laser supply than you were 3 months ago. Maybe that's a high class problem because of this demand, but I'm sort of curious, how do you view that? Are you leaving revenue on the table as a result of not simply being able to get these high power lasers that you need?
Yeah, the high powered lasers, you talked about it in the preamble. We are connecting data and making it move faster and faster. Everything, our company is based on optics. Optics is light. Nothing moves faster than light. So these data center customers that we have are trying to move traffic using light as the optimum medium. And we have a partnership with NVIDIA that's well known. NVIDIA invested in the company, and they are looking to deploy more and more photonics because they're building ever faster compute. And in that context, the demand for all these high-powered lasers that drive and connect the traffic has gone up substantially over the last couple of quarters. We fabricate these. We have to manufacture them. So our lead time is relatively long. And so we're having trouble just keeping up with the demand that NVIDIA and other customers are currently putting on us.
Okay, so back to sort of demand as well.
I mean, it's the same kind of argument that a lot of these CEOs have been making in the picks and shovels trade, which is that the largest customer that they have, NVIDIA, continuously is requesting more of their product. And because they're lead times on the product are obviously slower than expected given the unprecedented levels of demand, that's where you're getting the earnings growth to be as high as it is. Again, the reason I think the market freaked out in July is because the idea was that that demand would slow down because of models that are just as good as Anthropic and OpenAI, but that really doesn't get to the heart of why that demand would slow down. It might speak to why Anthropic and OpenAI can't afford to pay for that demand, but not why that demand itself is slowing down. And from that perspective, because if Anthropic and OpenAI can't afford to pay for it, someone will, because the demand is still there. Palantir back under 170, which is why I think the Nbis and CoreWeaves right here are making their move. Did Trump just tweet? Oh boy. Oh boy. All right. Did SPY go red? Getting a red candle. All right. Here you go. Trump tweet. The USA has total control over the Strait of Hormuz. I think we will keep it. Our naval blockade is being called by everyone a wall of steel, and there is nothing Iran can do about it. They have no navy. They have no air force. The remaining soldiers are unpaid. The IRGC is decimated and fleeing, and their leadership is uncertain at best. They have no money. Their country is shot. All they have is fake news and 300% inflation and getting worse. Iran is all talk and no action. The bully of the Middle East no longer. Praise be to Allah. President Donald J. Trump. Okay, this is a classic Trump. You know, let me throw it out into the ether and once again remind everybody that Iran can't mess with us type of. I don't know if it's a bearish post. I mean, he didn't say we're getting ready to put boots on the ground. He just once again reestablished that Iran is unsophisticated and they don't have a military to actually be able to fight. Which is quite frankly what he said yesterday as well in the Oval Office. Now on Truth Social, he tends to use vocabulary that's a little bit more creative, but nonetheless, yeah, it's not like there was a market moving announcement here. Did anyone think there's a market moving announcement? I mean, maybe we see some red candles out there, but that's not a market moving announcement. Yeah, you're already seeing S&P recover a little bit. I mean, that's not. If the market interprets that as escalation, then yeah, that's market moving. But oil still down 0.5%. I don't think he necessarily said anything other than Iran's military is gone, which he's been saying for the past 5 months. That's something new. Having said that, there have been 10 hedge funds that have officially signed up to the $100,000 per month Bloomberg reported Truth Social API, which means they're generating about 12 million of revenue on Truth Social from that API based on those 10 hedge funds that are paying 100 grand a month. So maybe Trump has to, give them some content because they're paying for fast news from his account. And so maybe this is the best that he could come up with that would aid in their shorts for like 10 seconds so that he could, fulfill the obligations of them paying $100,000 a month. So maybe. This tweet is pointless. It's legitimately pointless. There's nothing there. If the market actually reacts to that, that would be kind of surprising, but there is nothing there. Yes, 10 hedge funds have officially signed up. 10 hedge funds have officially signed up to pay $1.2 million a year. Here's the update on the capital gain stuff we were talking about earlier today. Let's pull this up right here.
Capital gains tax cut in hopes of gaining a boost for the Republicans in the midterms. Megan Casella in Washington with the story. Couldn't be going in a bigger, different direction than the socialists here, Megan.
That's right, Sarah. So this comes according to current National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett and former Director Larry Kudlow. They were discussing various ways of cutting capital gains taxes on Fox Business on Tuesday. Hassett said that President Trump is looking for promises to make to voters on what the administration will do if Republicans have power in the future. So he says, quote, "You could expect a lot more policy between now and the midterms." Kudlow then replied that he had spoken to the president, and he says the president likes the idea of indexing capital gains taxes to inflation and the idea of a bigger exemption. So I asked the White House about this, and a spokesman told me this morning that President Trump is always exploring new ideas to make America wealthy again, but that any policy announcements will come from the administration directly. Now, a couple of things to note on all of this. This is very preliminary, something that the president is considering asking Congress to do. The odds that Congress would tackle something like this ahead of the midterms are very slim. There has been some bipartisan support for pieces of it. There was a Senate bill introduced late last year that would index capital gains taxes, specifically on home sales, to inflation, but the calendar and momentum are just not on Congress's side. Lawmakers are here for about 3 weeks in September, but otherwise, they're mostly campaigning in their districts between now and November. Now, some conservative senators and analysts have argued in the past that the Treasury Department possibly could take some action on this without Congress to index gains to inflation. That would be on shaky legal grounds, though, and it would very quickly end up in the courts. Guys?
Yeah, I was just thinking of all of the other promised or at least hoped for legislation, Clarity Act, SAVE Act, that wasn't able to get in before the recess. I mean, 90 days is not a lot of time, Megan.
It's not a lot of time, and it's especially not a lot of time to get things done where there's going to be a lot of debate. Yes, some Democrats, especially moderate Democrats, like this, but maybe not enough Democrats to get something over the finish line. There could be some Republican pushback. To the cost of this specifically, Yale Budget Lab had estimated that indexing capital gains to inflation would cost $1 trillion over 10 years. So not something that they can easily attach to something that does have to pass, like the NDAA or funding the government. Those things will have to get done between now and November, but you're likely not going to see a lot of things like this attached to them.
Megan, thanks. Megan Casella, watching the pod.
As bullish as it is for the markets, if that were to happen, yeah, I do agree with what she said. It's probably unlikely, definitely before the midterms. Now, if the Republicans win the House and the Senate, SpaceX, she's trying for 140 here. She is trying, 200,000 shares waiting. Then maybe there's a shot. But if the Democrats get any control, or even if the Republicans have a minority control, there's no way they're going to pass this. Like, it's going to be very tough to make it happen. All right, 140. There it is, 140. And there she goes. And there she goes. Now, as long as this is not like a little pit stop, which you got to see, can we hold 140 right here? Are the sellers going to come right through? 140.20. First time in 3 weeks that SpaceX is above its IPO price officially. Rocket Lab is kind of flattish while SpaceX goes up. But you're seeing the money come in. 140 right there on Mr. SpaceX. I mean, that NVIDIA announcement also is technically super bullish for SpaceX. There's a lot more money going into compute. Elon needs a lot of compute. Micron right there, almost 930. It's not crazy to imagine SpaceX potentially getting a bid from that. CoreWeave 106. That is up 17% as that continues to go green. Where is ASTS? ASTS 7380. That is also still up 3. All right, so that Trump tweet didn't do much. Rocket Lab just got up to 81 right there from the low 80s. So now starting to follow SpaceX. There you go, 141. All right, she's moving. There it is. There it is. She is moving. I think you're going to have a lot of people step into these names today if they hold on to that momentum. 43 million shares as Rocket Lab starts to follow. ASTS also kind of following. Software names continue to be down. His tweets haven't really been doing much. That is a fair point, dude. Like, the last time a Trump tweet really changed or moved the market, I think, was the Carg Island tweet. And that was in early June or late May. Like, that was the last time I remember a tweet really like affected the market. I mean, S&P went from 725 that day to 742. So that was like the biggest move I think it's made in the past couple months from a Trump tweet. NVIDIA 224. NVIDIA almost 225, but it's been a while since then. SpaceX is worth more than Meta now. Where is the market cap? SpaceX almost 1.9 trillion. Meta at 1.49. Yeah, see, it doesn't make sense to say there he goes. It has to be a she. Like, that's so awkward. There he goes. He's going for it. It's like, no, dude, it's always got to be a she. It's always been a she. Can't explain it, but it has to. Palantir and Hood have been she's since 2023. And then every stock ended up being a she. SMCI up 14. Chipotle, that's up 2. Lumentum up 9, as that's now going higher. Say they. Might have to say they. 897 Lumentum. SanDisk up 9. All right, so that's continues to make a move. Dude, SanDisk 1400. Maybe we get there. Maybe. Nbis is still moving. I am not pronouncing Chipotle wrong. Maybe you have been brainwashed by the media on how Chipotle is pronounced. You ever think of that? Maybe it's not me. Maybe it's the media. It's really important to question your assumptions. It's really important. Nbis, look, if we even close above 230, that would be amazing. The fact that it's holding it, even close above 225, would be absolutely incredible. Oh, by the way, I don't think Trump is running in 2028. I know there's a 3% chance that he runs, but yesterday, for the first time ever, he kind of acknowledged that he's probably not going to. I think most people thought he wasn't going to, but there was always that thought of like, what if he actually tries? But based on what he said yesterday, I think he's probably not going to.
At the dinner you put on at Trump 2028, are you serious about seeking a third term?
Everybody asked me that question, and you know that the law is very strong on that. I'd love to run, but the law is very strong. I get asked by well, even tonight, they're screaming at the event, 2028. Now, everybody wants me to do it, but the law is very strong.
At the dinner.
It's the first time I've ever heard him say the law is very strong, implying that he won't do it. You know, I think he always knew he can't actually do it, but he always leaves it up to interpretation, which is why the prediction markets literally have him at a 3% chance, which is crazy, right? Because it's like, you're not allowed to do that. So who the hell is betting on him actually doing that? Like, people are putting real money behind him actually being able to go for a run for a third term. And so yesterday, I think those comments kind of solidified that he's definitely not going to attempt it, which means it's Vance and Rubio at that point. And that will set up for 2028. NVIDIA 224.60 up. Accelera back above 10. As that continues to go green as well. All right, what else do we got here? What else? We looked at the Trump tweet. Didn't do too much. Oh my goodness. QQQ September 18th calls. $7 million, 754 strike, which is about, what is that, 5% up from here? A little bit less. Goodness, dude. A month away, another 5% on the queues, $7 million of premium. Yeah, the call buyers are not slowing down today. Reddit's still down, Amcor's still up, Coherent still up 6 as well. CoreWeave trying to hold on. SpaceX just lost 140 back to 139.72. Let's see if he can get back above 140, but you did have a lot of buyers coming at 140. You had over 1 million shares traded at 140. So we'll see if that comes back. By the way, DealBook just came out. OpenAI's run rate revenue from business customers grew 32% month over month in July, outpacing 20% growth in the overall run rate revenue. That seems relatively bullish. I think we're going to need the S1 to really know how bullish it is. We'll get Anthropic's S1 pretty soon. If that goes well, then maybe OpenAI will be IPOing in 2027. I also think Anthropic's getting ready to go public soon because, to an extent, they see the open source revolution happening in front of them, which is why they keep lowering their prices for Fable 5. And like, if they don't do it now, when are they going to do it, right? Like, if there is another Kimi K3 moment where it's not just better at Fable 5 at front-end design, but it's better at Fable 5 than everything, you're going to start asking, you're going to have a lot of people asking, why the hell am I paying $3 trillion for Anthropic? And so I think going public right now and getting that valuation, raising that capital, even if the stock declines, it'll at least give them the money to keep executing. So the sooner the better. Now, OpenAI, I just don't think they have the numbers to justify doing it, whereas Anthropic does have the numbers. There's just like the fear of open source. Robinhood as well, losing it today, 93.98, as that goes below 94. But at some point, they have to do it. Nvidia, we touched 224.99. Could not get 225. I do not know if app's a buy here. I really don't know enough about this business. I got to look into it. Like my gut says yes, the growth will be rewarded, but obviously the street's upset about something, and this one just keeps falling. This one has gone the opposite of every other software name. Like even Adobe and Salesforce have done better than this, and this is growing at like 70%. Adobe's growing at like 7%. Like, so there's something about the growth that feels so unsustainable to the street that they'd rather buy the legacy software names over this one. And that's going to take a little bit of digging to understand why. Andy said I bought app calls this morning. Yeah, look, a reversion to the mean trade would be the play here. Like a reversion to like 450 from 313. I mean, that'd be a hell of a move, especially on options. Question is it structurally dead or is this just a knee-jerk reaction? Rocket Lab, 80.5, S&P, that Trump tweet basically leaving it flat. It stopped a lot of the momentum, but it didn't break down red here on the S&P. Okay, what else do we have? PPI tomorrow. That should be fine. By the way, Leopold bought 11% of that company that we talked about in Japan. Lakers still getting sold for $12 billion. Wow, Beth Hammock just posted on LinkedIn that it's time for us to raise rates. She's one of the Fed members. Why is she going on LinkedIn and tweet? Like, does she really have to post this stuff on LinkedIn? Didn't Kevin Warr say we're going to stop talking and stop giving forward guidance? Who let her go on LinkedIn? And goodness, listen to this shit. There's no tension in the mandate. Policy is not restrictive. And the longer we wait to take action to bring inflation back to our 2% objective, the more challenging it will be to bring it back down and the more expensive it will be for American people. Bro, on LinkedIn? Are you serious? Like not even on Bloomberg, not even on traditional business media. She's actually going direct to the public. That's how serious she is about a rate cut. There are real world consequences of elevated inflation. I talked to someone in Pennsylvania who has to tell his kids he can't get them the ice cream they ask for because he doesn't have extra cash. I talked to an Ohio restaurant owner who had to drop his building insurance after seeing the premiums triple in 3 years. I talked to an Ohio manufacturer that can't raise prices despite soaring input costs. This is why now is the time to act. This is crazy, dude. This is kind of crazy. I mean, if she is this obsessed about it and the war were to come to, I mean, was she this obsessed when oil was at 65 in June? And what if we get back there? I know we're at 3.4%, but we just came in line with expectations. And part of the reason it was up was because of shelter. Guess why shelter's up? Because we're not cutting rates. If we cut some rates, it might help shelter come down. Like this is absolutely not the solution here, especially in a world in which AI in and of itself is deflating. I mean, if shelter was 2/3 of the reason for why CPI went up as much as it did, do we think raising rates is going to help the shelter problem, the housing issue we're having, or maybe not cutting because they're definitely not going to vote for a cut, but definitely not raising it. I mean, unfreaking believable here. And LinkedIn, out of all places, Wendy's is up 12% because Nelson Peltz is it's got halted. Nelson Peltz is buying a stake. Wow, he's trying to buy the whole thing. Nelson Peltz prepares a bid for Wendy's. Wendy's only has a $1.6 billion market cap. That actually would be really easy for Nelson Peltz to buy the entire thing. That would actually not be that hard. Wendy's has been a Wall Street bet stock that has been going viral over the past couple months because of A, their short float, but B, they had a really good earnings. This thing got up to like $9 a month ago. So not that crazy to see it back there, but then again, will the board actually allow him to buy the stock? She most definitely spoke to Burry on 3 different lines. Dude, LinkedIn, like, it's so weird. We got to see the comments under this post. I wonder if people agree with her. I mean, I would imagine there's definitely a bunch of people that agree. What? This is this is interesting. First of all, she tweeted a picture as well. I mean, this picture is just like her sitting in a room, which, okay, you would think she would, I don't know, put a picture of the people she's talking about that she's so concerned about. But yeah, look at that. She's getting killed in the comments. There is no 2% objective. I believe hiking rates in September is a big mistake. This is a conundrum. I mean, obviously, there's probably a bunch of people that agree with her, but I don't know, man. This is weird. Weird. Wendy's, again, that's halted on the Nelson Peltz bid for that. We don't know what the bid amount is. It's got to be more than 1.6 billion. I doubt it's like anywhere near 4 or 5 billion. Maybe it's like 2.5, 3 billion that he's going for. Wendy's up, Nvidia 224. Yeah, dude, some of these Fed presidents have lost their mind. I mean, they've lost their damn mind. I don't think raising rates in this environment, and I'm not even saying it because of the stock market. Like, forget the stock market. Like if people are already delinquent on credit cards, auto loans, you know, we're barely giving out new mortgages. Mortgages are 7%. Like, this is not the time to make rates 25 basis points more expensive across the entire economy. Nvidia 224. Also, I just think they're kind of freaking out about inflation. I think it will be resolved. Like, the market forces, this is what Kevin Warsh has been trying to say, will take care of inflation. You kind of just need this, you know, and I think Trump knows this, which is why he really needs to get this Iran thing over with, because once oil comes down, you're really going to start to see the downside pressure. It's probably going to take till December. It'll take a few months for that to really get baked in, but I mean, already the energy index was down 5% in July for today's CPI. Yeah, plus our debt, 100%. I mean, dude, we already can't afford the debt. Like, yeah, like legit forget the stock market. The cost of financing things in this country from a governmental perspective and then from a citizen perspective, it's going to explode. And like, yeah, it might lead to some contraction in earnings, but honestly, a lot of the earnings are going to be fine because the hyperscalers keep spending CapEx and all the AI names are going to keep producing earnings. But it's more so the question of like regular people, how they're going to be able to continuously afford the type of rates they're going to be getting across the board. And then at what point will that actually lead to inflation coming down? What if inflation is still relatively sticky, even if we raise rates? Like, are they going to raise by another 25 bips? Or like, we're going to go back to 5% like 2022? And this is a Wendy's. Yeah, like, come on, bro. All right, Wendy's is not halted anymore. 835. I think there's going to be a lot of traders that step into this one. $8 stock, 9 million shares of volume. Nelson Peltz wants to buy it. You might get some people coming in. But look, the big thing is this Iran situation does not help. Like, it really doesn't. It's making, I think, Warsh's job a nightmare because every time he tries to make an argument, his companions just say, well, look at oil. If it's not slowing down, then we've got to do something. Which is why I think Trump has switched his tone over the past week and he's trying to somehow get a deal done. Nbis 233, not being affected. SanDisk up 8%. ARM just went red. ARM was, I think, the most overvalued semiconductor stock. It was trading at 120 times sales at some point in June. Like, that was one of those names that it was inevitable. It probably had to get corrected. But the momentum in it was so strong. It still trades at 50 times sales. And, you know, their CPU business is growing, but it's not like AMD Intel type of growth. It's good growth. But I think this one makes sense to kind of chill out at these levels as it tries to consolidate around this 270, 280 range. Fear and greed is at 63. All right, so that continues to go higher. Greed now 63. This is actually the highest it's been all week. I think we were at 61 a couple days ago. It makes sense if the semis are actually rallying today. You would have some of that greed come back into the system. SMH up a nice 3%. SMH at the top in June was 671. So technically, we are down from the top 12.7%. At the very low, we went to 490. So at the very low, we were down 27%, which means we have basically made up 15% of the gap from the lows. And, you know, a few more good sessions that could easily get back to the highs, but also I think people are going to be a lot more cautious now of SMH. Q's right there, 724. Corning also up on the day. Yeah, small caps also just turned red. By the way, small caps, I don't think small caps are expecting a rate hike either, because if we get a rate hike, these guys are going to be the ones that get affected the most, given they have the most debt. They have the worst type of debt. They don't really have the type of earnings growth that some of the large caps have, even though they have good earnings growth. So I feel like small caps would have not rallied and be up 20% this year if the market actually thought we were getting a rate hike. Having said that, you know, a lot of the Fed members are also building their personal brands. And, you know, there might be a world in which the reason they do all these conferences and stuff and take these firm stances is so that they know they're not going to be able to actually get what they want, but acting as if they can care and, you know, putting out all that content as if they care, build their brand. And so that might be something that Beth Hammock is doing here as well. Let's get an update on some of this AI stuff from SoftBank and also what we're seeing with CPI.
Of this technology for at least the last 7 years. For example, here's what SoftBank CEO Masa-san told me in 2019.
Roman citizens, they were so rich that they didn't have to do primitive jobs because they had servants. Did the Roman citizen became all sad? They lost job and they lost things. Did they have a sad life? No, they enjoyed because they got the free wine, free bread, and free entertainment in Colosseum.
It's funny looking back at that. Kate Rooney joins us now. She's got to look forward in part and how AI hasn't kept its inflation of productivity promises, perhaps. Kate?
Well, David, Masa-san is such a prime example of this dynamic. We've heard from tech leaders for years now, hyping this deflationary effect of AI and have really promised record productivity as part of all this. So far, none of it is showing up in the data. Instead, AI is causing some near-term inflation and producing very little evidence of any sort of widespread productivity boom. The multi-trillion-dollar spending spree on data centers is one of the biggest factors boosting prices. Latest CPI this morning shows about a 3.5% jump in personal computers and equipment, rising memory cost overall, very big factor there. And then you have software prices up about 21% from a year ago, modest jump sequentially. We spoke to Ronnie Chatterjee, he's the chief economist over at OpenAI now. He does argue that this is a short-term shock since demand right now is so drastically outpacing supply. He did say some of the immediate cost of AI are a lot easier to spot than potential benefits.
I do think that this is one thing we sometimes miss. We think about AI, we think about all the amazing things it can do. For it to impact the economy, it has to be adopted by organizations. Those organizations have to realize value. That's the process that we're in right now. And that's why focusing on enterprise AI is probably the most important thing we can do in terms of understanding AI's impact on the economy.
OpenAI with a new report out this morning addressing that, and then in part highlighting this disconnect between some of the biggest users of AI and then everyone else. So the power adopters use it about 8 times more than the median user. That gap is also widening. It was only about double that usage a few months ago. There are some questions over how much more productive AI will make us if it is widely adopted. And in the meantime, it is posing a dilemma for the Fed. Kevin Warsh has been a big believer in AI, but the Fed, of course, cannot set rates on potential gains that just haven't shown up yet. Worked on this story with Matt Peterson. You can read a lot more on CNBC.com, guys.
Love stuff from Matt. I think one of the
And that goes back to Beth Hammock, making her pitch and Kevin Warsh being in a tough situation to try to navigate this. Here's the Nelson Peltz update. We don't have an exact number on how much he's trying to buy Wendy's for.
submitted by Trian, consistent with its fiduciary duties, follows an FT report from May saying Peltz was in talks to raise some funding for a bid. Stock was halted, but has since reopened, as you can see, up gaining about 12%. Let's begin with two tech earnings.
Okay, so still don't have the exact amount he wants to pay, but obviously he does want to pick up Wendy's. So, once again, going back to her argument, AI should be very deflationary, but you have to look out into the future to see that deflation. And the Fed, Beth Hammock, they're looking out 6 weeks before the next Fed meeting, FOMC, and obviously they don't want to, deliberate on what could happen 4 years from now due to AI. Cerebras, that's up 7. Cisco's up 2. Iren still up 6 on the day. Yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting to see if the other Fed members vote for this. I mean, they're probably going to get more than 25% on the rate hike train, but oil's got to come down in a meaningful way for that to happen. Burry just said Berkshire Hathaway has lost its edge. Burry argues Greg Abel is deploying cash too aggressively in an expensive market instead of waiting for Buffett-style fat pitches. Michael Burry says Berkshire Hathaway is no longer attractive under CEO Greg Abel questioning his capital allocation discipline. All right, so this guy hates Palantir. This guy hates Nbis. This guy hates AI. He hates Berkshire now. Then he buys DraftKings. He loves gambling. It's like, I hate everything about AI, infrastructure, American enterprises succeeding. I hate Greg Abel. But yeah, let's bet on people losing their life savings because they bet on the Knicks the other night. Like it's just such a weird way that he's thinking about the world right now. Such a weird way to think about this. Yeah, he loved GameStop for a while until he thought, I mean, he called Ryan Cohen the next Warren Buffett. And look, I think Ryan Cohen's a smart guy. Interviewed him on the channel. I disclosed at the time I was not invested in GameStop because even though I wanted to talk to him, the acquisition of eBay did not seem as likely to me, did not seem like an attractive thing to bet on. Maybe Ryan Cohen becomes the next Warren Buffett one day. Maybe he turns GameStop into a holding company and buys up a ton of businesses, but that's not happening right now. And I don't even know if Ryan Cohen wants to be the next Buffett, but the fact that Burry was betting on GameStop on that thesis, I don't know. It's just weird. This whole year has had a very weird set of trades. He exited DraftKings. Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of this stuff is weird, man. It's like I like DraftKings for 2 weeks, then I don't like them. But I'm going to keep that trade. I think either he made 5% or he lost 2%. It was basically break even. I think he either made 5 or lost 5%. But then the shorts that you're underwater on, he's never going to cover them because he can't admit he's wrong. So it's like it's a very interesting dynamic that's happening right here. And now the question is, can these names that he is short, Nbis, Oracle, Palantir, continue to make a move higher? Nbis almost 236 as it's trying to go for that 240. Yeah, PayPal, this one just hasn't moved at all. I mean, I get not wanting to buy AI infrastructure names and wanting to buy other assets because you think they're overvalued and expensive. But the assets you're buying, like a PayPal, for example, if there's no juice there, if there's no market interest, even if it's a good company and a good business, granted, the business is not really growing anymore, and they just fired their second CEO in 4 years. There are some problems where you're like, okay, maybe I'll pay a premium for a neocloud that's actually in one of the greatest industrial build-outs. By the way, that premium now got chopped by more than 60% over the past month. Maybe there's a better attractive value proposition there than leaning into something that's just not where the market has any attention for, and probably is not going to have attention until they get back to growth. I mean, it's fine for the market to ignore companies and to buy those companies while the market's ignoring it. But those companies have to be going up and to the right on the metrics that matter. And then eventually the market will catch up with it. The market usually catches up with companies that are compounding earnings because there's just not that many companies that are doing that. So I think Uber is going to be fine because they keep growing. The market just has their own external beliefs for why, same thing with Airbnb, which was dead for the past couple of years, that just exploded. Same thing with Zeta, that's been growing at 50% for the past year. But, the market, as long as they're internally growing, the market will eventually catch up. Momentum now up 13% right here. Yeah, hopefully like SoFi. By the way, someone said, Amit, did you see SoFi is trying to get into international banking? I did not see that, but this is something they've talked about for a while. So I don't think that's necessarily new information. And I would encourage them. Just like Robinhood's going international, it makes sense for all of them to go for it. Qs are still somewhat going red. Do you consider yourself more advanced than him? No, but Burry, he's a very smart guy. I don't have the type of experience that Burry has when it comes to investing. I mean, Burry's been doing this for a few decades now. I do think, though, this was my psychoanalytical analysis of Burry. I don't think I'm a better investor than Burry. I think he just has a lot more experience. He probably knows a lot more about markets in general. But I do think, from a psychoanalytical perspective, he was on top of the world in 2008. He was on a high that very few people ever experience, which is you were right about something that everyone was wrong about. Everyone lost a lot of money. You made a lot of money. Like that is something most people never experience. A lot of people experience it on the long side. Like you're long a stock, people don't buy it, the company executes, and then you end up making money, and people don't make money because they didn't buy into it, but people don't lose money. But the opposite side, where you're short an entire economy and people lose all their money and you make all their money on their demise because you were right for 3 years before anyone noticed. I think he's been chasing that high for the past 20 years. And I think nothing has lived up to that experience he had in 2008. And the only way to get that experience again is to call the next big bubble. And the only way to get the next big bubble is to have the level of investment and excitement and exuberance that we're seeing, like we saw in the housing market in 2008, that we're seeing in AI. You didn't have it with mobile. You didn't have it with cloud. You had it with the internet, which I think Burry technically called the dot-com bubble as well. But, it wasn't like a massive trade for him. But he did have articles out at the time that this is a bubble. And he was right about that in 2000. Everything collapsed. So I think he wants that crazy, crazy high again. I don't know if he's going to get it, but then again, life's about the chase. And I think if his entire life has been about calling things the right way when everyone was wrong, then I feel like he feels this is no different. And there's plenty of ways to interpret this market feeling very similar to the dot-com bubble. We've been through all the comparisons over and over again. I think there's a lot of responses to those comparisons, but this has got to be like served up on a silver spoon for him to feel excited to want to go after another big short and get that glory again. It's just leading to him making decisions in the face of real earnings growth, which I think, could backfire dramatically. Wow, Bloomberg. Oh boy, Trump being sued on his Truth Social API. Oh, wow. Who's suing him? Trump is being sued. Trump sued over plan to sell fast access to Truth Social posts. Who's suing him? Whoa. Who's brave enough to sue him? There's no way it's like a public company because they want to be friendly with them. There's no way it's another politician, right? Do we think it's like Nancy or Bernie? I mean, it could be a hedge fund, but I don't know if it would be a hedge fund. Oh, I got it. The Intercept and the Freedom of the Press Foundation. What the hell is this? Freedom of Press Foundation are prominent independent nonprofit organizations in the U.S. dedicated to investigative journalism, government transparency, and protecting whistleblowers and journalists. While they operate as separate entities, they frequently collaborate and share overlapping roots in the defense of free press and First Amendment rights. Okay, I don't know if a little nonprofit is going to be able to win this lawsuit. Now, granted, they could. This looks like some shady shit. Like it is what it is. It's some shady shit, but the legal fees it would require to sue the president, I don't know if this organization has enough money, or if they would be able to raise enough money from their readers to go after. I mean, out of all the things to go after Trump for, like, don't get me wrong, this Truth Social API thing is absolutely crazy, but I don't know how much people will be motivated to sue over this specific thing. Editor-in-chief says Trump is trying to enrich himself by privatizing government information, which he has no right to sell. We won't let it stand. The lawsuit seeks to vindicate the principle that the president of the United States cannot profit from the official government statements of the president. I mean, look, the Truth Social thing is horrible. The meme coin was also horrible, but nothing happened. So I'd just be curious to see if something actually happens here. And if Trump actually has to deal with a real lawsuit. AMD, are we back to 500? Not yet, but trying to get there. That is interesting. You know, I think people had a feeling that someone would challenge this because, again, it's $100,000 a month to get access to the president of the United States content before everybody else. Even if it's 20 seconds earlier, that's enough to make money. So it obviously feels kind of crazy. But will there be enough support behind this and enough momentum to actually bring this lawsuit to court? Nbis 230, 237. Apparently this is a big organization. They have a lot of journalists that are under them. The organization itself is doing this. Freedom Intercept and Freedom of the Press Foundation is what they are. That is what you got. All right, we'll see. I mean, look, if they actually win the lawsuit, it's not Trump that's doing this technically. It's Trump media. So, like, if they win the lawsuit, Trump media would just shut it down, and they would stop it. If they don't win the lawsuit, then I guess they would keep going. Micron almost at 930, Oracle at 148. Yeah, they're technically not suing Trump. They're suing Truth, the corporation itself. So theoretically, he wouldn't have to, from my understanding, face that type of liability. Anyway, going back to Michael Burry, yeah, I think he's trying to chase the high. I really think he's trying to chase the high. I think he would be the happiest person in the world if he saw the AI thing collapse, because he would just get to be right again. And sometimes for some people, it's about ego. It's about being right. And all of us have an ego. All of us want to be right. But I think he thrives off everyone being wrong. What is that quote? It's like, it's not enough if I win, my enemies must lose. Where is that quote from? Is that from another movie? That's a classic film that I might not have seen. But I think that's his mentality there. Tesla. It is not from Dragon Ball Z. Okay, I'm not falling for that. Or Naruto. 324 on Tesla. It's not a Queen song, bro. Can you guys give me the actual answer? Because then I'm going to believe it. And I'm going to go around saying, you remember that quote from that song from Queen? And people are going to look at me like I'm an idiot. I'm like actually trying to depend on you guys for real pop culture information. Gold back above 4,500. Dude, the market, gold futures know something about this market. And maybe they think the Iran war is going to come to an end. We're going to go back to risk on and gold's going to pump. But this thing has been on an absolute tear. It was almost below 4,000 last month. And now 4,500. Goku, the main character in Naruto, said that. I wasn't trolling that day, dude. I really thought Goku was in Naruto. Really thought that was the freaking show. Silver's also up. Oh, sorry, gold's at 44.50, not 45. It was at 4,500 in the pre-market. Now it's at 44.25, but still up 1%. It was at 3,500 back in August of last year. Then silver at 65. Fortunately, Bitcoin is not really participating. Someone needs to wake it up. Let's take a listen to the Bitwise CEO, see if he can give us some hope on where crypto's going.
Is this the sort of biggest, I don't want to say catalyst, but maybe advertisement for having your Bitcoin in an ETF since these ETFs were launched a few years ago?
You know, we've certainly seen a lot of money flow into ETFs, I think in part in response to this change. I think it's a reminder that the frontier of what the safest way to store your crypto assets is always evolving. It's different today than it was 5 years ago, and it was different then than it was 5 years prior. It is true that a lot of investors find comfort in the institutional protections that come with the ETF structure, and I think that will accelerate over time. So I do think this is positive for ETF flows in the crypto market.
So it raises the question, Matt, what is the safest way to store your Bitcoin right now?
Well, look, there are a number of good quality ways to store your Bitcoin. I do think ETFs and Bitcoin ETFs, we have an ETF, BITB, come with a lot of protections that investors find comfort in. They're at regulated, qualified custodians. Bitcoin was rallying. One sign that you're at the bottom of a bear market is when an asset stops responding to bad news. In a bear market, it tends to over-respond to bad news and ignore good news. We're in the reverse right now. We're ignoring bad news. We're maybe over-indexing to good news. I think it's a sign that we may be at the bottom of this crypto winter and that we may have a strong end of the year.
So then if you think we're at the bottom and we have a strong end to the year, what would be the next catalyst in your view that could actually move this asset higher?
Yeah, I think actually it's a quiet catalyst underneath the surface, which are these large wealth management platforms. I really think that's the next marginal buyer of Bitcoin coming into the market. And that's not a 1 minute catalyst. That's something that takes place over time. You know, over the past few months, despite a market that's down 50% from its all-time high, we've seen a number of major wealth management platforms approve our spot Solana ETF, BSOL. The reason for that is not FOMO, it's merit. It's these advisors that want to be part of this asset class. I was just at a major wealth management conference yesterday. They are still extremely bullish. They're talking about 2 to 4% allocations. Look, I think this bull market is going to be slower, less volatile, and more institutional than bull markets in the past, but it's also going to be building a stronger foundation for the asset that's going to lift us higher over time.
Matt, I really like what you said earlier, that maybe what is safe is continuously evolving, especially in this age of AI. So let's say theoretically you have a client or a friend who has $1 million in Bitcoin. How would you advise them to divvy up those assets when it comes to cold storage and ETFs? And I know, of course, everyone has a different risk tolerance, different profile, but just generally.
Yeah, look, I think ETFs are a great solution for a majority of those assets. I think it's valuable for people to keep a portion in cold storage so they have that opt-out option for them. But
not really that encouraging. I mean, he's talking about Bitcoin ETFs still being a way to get exposure to Bitcoin. But the problem is Bitcoin's not going up. Who cares about the stupid ETF? Like, until the asset actually moves, no one gives a shit if it's hot wallet, cold wallet, hot pocket, cold pocket, like ETF, not ETF, spot. This thing needs to move. Needs to move. Is Nbis actually going for 240? Wow. What a day, folks. What a freaking day. I mean, that is a hell of a move right there. CoreWeave as well, still making its momentum with Nbis. Nbis, though, outperforming CoreWeave today. 240 has 45,000 shares. CoreWeave up 19%. Still hasn't touched 111 again. Nbis has gotten back over 230. CoreWeave's got to get back at least over 110, but still both massive days. 23% for Nbis, CoreWeave 20%. Yes, that's green. Don't make me hungry. Dude, I haven't had a hot pocket in a long time. I feel like I had one of those like a decade ago. They were good though. The bagel bites, those were also legit. Bagel bites, coming home after school with the pepperoni, that was different. CoreWeave 107. Okay, I think that's it, folks. I think that's pretty much it. First green semi day we've had in a long time. It's been a minute since we've had it. Hopefully it can stay. Yes, the software names are red. Said it in the pre-market, had a feeling. As soon as I saw the semis were up this morning, I woke up at like 5:30. I was like, yeah, software, like after the run software's had, there's no way it's going to be able to rally with semis. If it actually did, I mean, S&P would be at all-time highs right now, but hyperscaler software taking a breather feels relatively normal, and the Lumentums, the Microns of the world getting some love, which is very nice to see. Are you buying the Robinhood Venture Fund IPO? I am not. Look, if you believe in the 80 startups they invested in, then you buy them. I like to do a lot more due diligence, especially if I'm going to make a private investment. So it's just not my style to buy a fund that's taking 80 bets in small companies. Now, if they find the next Uber inside of those, then it's going to be a big return. But I'd rather kind of look at more public companies to analyze. The good thing is there will be buyers for it, and Robinhood will collect a ton of fees on it. So as a Robinhood investor, you kind of have exposure to it from that perspective. Did we hit 240? Nbis got rejected at 239.81. That means Burry's now down almost 30% on this short. Apple announces event for September 9th. Interesting. Let's see if we can get some news on that. That might be the iPhone or lack of iPhone launch based on what they're doing with the iPhone. Apple event September 9th. According to Bloomberg, they're going to introduce the iPhone 18, 18 Pro, 18 Pro Max, foldable phone, new Apple TV, Ultra Watch 4, and the Watch Series 12, and the first ever smart home hub, but that'll come out in 2027. Interesting. I don't know how much people are going to care, but we're going to have to see if that foldable phone. Oh, hold on. We got another thing from Bloomberg. Apple now skipping iPhone 18 launch this year. Apple plans to split up the launch of the iPhone 18 series, and it has already been widely rumored. Well, they're still going to announce it, though, but they're going to have different models come out in March 2027. So Ultra, Pro Max, and 18 Pro, September 26, and then 18 and then 18E, 2027. And then the iPhone Air 2 in March 2027, too. Yeah, I don't know if it's going to make that much of a difference. I mean, ultimately, Apple's growth has been accelerating due to AI demand, but if the semis are back, people are not going to hold Apple, which is why Apple's down from 340 to 301. I mean, really buying Apple at 340 means you had to believe that the high beta momentum trade was done for the rest of the year, because there's no way people were paying 45 times earnings for 15% growth when you have something like Nbis growing 450%, unless the sentiment on a Nbis was so bad that you had to flee to Apple for safety. And that sentiment has just flipped, which means, Apple was a trade last month and you had to kind of get out of it, or else you would be bag holding it at those levels. Granted, if you bought Apple a long time ago, you probably don't care, but the new buyers might have to wait. Okay, cool. I think that's what we got. Oil still up a bit. Trump's tweet not moving the market too much. The lawsuit against Truth Social, we'll see what happens there. Semi still having a great day. Software taking a bit of a breather. Nbis and CoreWeave leading the day. Hyperscalers flat. Nvidia tried to get above 225, touched it for a little bit now at 223.77. And the space names as well. SpaceX trying to go for another test of 140. Bloomberg says everyone inside of Apple refers to the company's upcoming foldable phone as the iPhone Ultra internally. Okay. Google put out their foldable Pixel. Apple will have theirs, and ultimately the market will decide if there is the demand for foldables in a meaningful way. All right, I think that is it for us, folks. On the close, we have Cerebrus, we have Coherent, we have Cisco. I think today will be the first day of the podcast with me, Jose, Tanner, and Neil. I have to confirm with them, but it's supposed to be every Wednesday. So I think we all might just stream earnings together and then just go into the podcast. So every Wednesday, basically from 4:30 to 5:30, we'll do a weekly gathering of us four where we talk stocks, markets, etc. So I think today's when it starts. So we'll be talking about those earnings. We'll be getting into that pod, and then we will keep going from there. It'll be on my channel, but I think they'll be streaming it as well. So it'll probably be on everyone's channel. Inflection also in the quantum space, they report. So we'll be taking a look at them. Congratulations to everyone in the NeoCloud trade. Congrats if you are in the semi trade. I know it's been a rough couple weeks. If you want more exposure to software, maybe the next couple of days, if semis continue to rally, you get a chance to buy some software. And maybe this is kind of the momentum breakout that the market's been waiting for, but it has only been a few hours. I think we got to give it at least a few weeks to see that we are officially back with this momentum trade. And if it is, then those dips should be rewarded. Okay, word of the day. What do we got? What do we have? Foldable phones gonna be like $3,000. Yeah, first of all, who's paying $1,900 for Google's? Like Apple's definitely gonna be in that $2,500, $3,000 range. I just don't know how many people in this economy are willing to spend that much on a foldable phone. They weren't willing to do it on a Vision Pro. So then they have to ask themselves, how much better is that foldable phone experience to spend on that? What the heck is this word? Heteroskedasticity. A condition where the amount of variability or unpredictability changes over time rather than remaining constant. Markets exhibit heteroskedasticity. Months of tranquility can suddenly give way to violent swings. Okay, so we definitely experienced that over the past month. You guys have heard this word before? I've never heard this word before. It shouldn't be too hard to say though, technically. Oh, hold on. This guy said it a different way. Okay, let's get through this ad. Heterodascatisticity. There's so many vowels in this word, bro. Mid for you, it's homos. Bro, you guys are crazy. Homoskedasticity. You guys have heard this word before. I have never freaking heard this thing. Okay.
Heteroskedasticity. Heteroskedasticity.
Okay. Heteroskedasticity.
Heteroskedasticity.
There you go. That's what we got. That is our word of the day. We will do Song of the Week on Friday. We'll do it on Friday, so I'll listen to it over the weekend. And then next week, I'll give you my thoughts on the song. So we'll do Song of the Week on Friday, and we'll keep going from there. Pakistan, just now from Al Jazeera, mediators are requesting additional time to resolve the outstanding issues between the United States and Iran. Pakistan is working to keep the diplomatic track open by extending a 60-day period. Pakistani mediators are optimistic that the 60-day period will be extended. Okay. Hopefully that is going to be how things play out. And if that's the case, maybe we start to see oil actually come down. Okay, what are we gonna spam Steve with? That word is too long to spam him with. We need a different word. What's a better word? What's a different word? What's a good one? Someone will use it on CNBC today. If I ever make a CNBC appearance, I have to bust out every single word of the day we've had. I've got to just be like talking with 15 different words of the day. So when you guys see me, But yeah, the heterodascicity of the market, the way that, why can't I see that word? Heterodascicity. Those S's in the middle, it's hard to, heterodascicity. I got to listen to how to say that word again. Say it. Because I'm going to be on CNBC. I'm going to mess it up on live television in front of everybody. Yes, let's do Hot Pocket. Hot Pocket. By the way, the Mike HAWK thing worked perfect on him last time. I don't even think he realized what he said, but he said it like 5 times. It was great. But Hot Pocket, there we go. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'll be back on the close. I'll likely have some friends with me. We'll get into earnings, and we'll keep going from there. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. I'll see you guys in a few hours. Bye, everybody. Have a good one.